or meeting of the Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission and not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt the meeting, please either switch it to the silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I'll ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary Kathy Zarnecki to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Buechner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Mr. Faison moves to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Mr. Fox makes a second. Any discussion on approving the agenda? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from the December 12th meeting. Would someone like to move to approve those minutes? Mr. Buechner makes a motion and Mr. Fox seconds it. Any discussion on approving the minutes from the December 12th meeting? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next on the agenda is public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the Planning Commission for an item that is not on the agenda tonight? Seeing no one coming forward, then we will move on to item number 5, which is a plan unit development, file number PUD 020JPLN 2023-0021, a concept development plan CDP and preliminary development plan PE approval for the Village of Hastings PUD, which is on the east side of Livernois, north of Square Lake, PIN 88-20-03-301-088 and 023 and 024 and 025 and 88-20-03-351-004, Section 3, presently zoned NN Neighborhood Node Q and R1B One Family Residential Zoning Districts. And I assume Mr. Carlisle gets the honors again tonight.
Yes, thank you, and good evening to the Planning Commission and the public. Mr. Chairman, I believe this is perhaps the 4th or 5th time this Planning Commission and the public has seen this project, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into too much detail about the past and the background, but more focused on the changes to the plan since the last time the Planning Commission has seen it. But just for a quick background, the subject site is located on the east side of Livernois, north of Square Lake, and again, and we note it wraps around the northwest corner of this intersection. Proposed before you tonight is a 32-unit new residential units and preserving of 3 existing home sites on the site, and so there will be a total of 35 units total. We note that the housing types include a mix of row houses / townhomes, duplexes, and single-family residential detached. The site plan is in front of you. The site is outlined in red. Those little boxes all represent different housing and housing types. We do note there are 32 units, and this includes, again, a mix of row houses and townhomes, duplexes, detached ranch, attached ranch, and 3 single-family homes. In addition, there are 2 outdoor recreational areas proposed, one located in the north central portion of the development and one more in the central part. And those outdoor recreation areas include a sport court and a butterfly garden. Just for reference, this gives a kind of a visual rendering, a bird's eye view of the site in question. It's a little skewed here, but this is Livernois here on the left side of the screen and Square Lake here to the south. The duplexes are located at the rear and back end of the site. The attached ranches are located along some of the northern border, more central into the site. The detached ranches are located along the northern border of the site, adjacent to Livernois. The proposed row/townhomes are located in the central portion of the site, and the 3 single-family preserved homes are located here adjacent to Livernois. As we noted, there have been some changes to the site plan since the Planning Commission last reviewed it. The first and most significant change is the applicant has removed a total of 9 units from the site down to a total of 35. The most significant change to those 9 unit removals is the Planning Commission remembers in this location, there was a 6-unit townhome attached development that fronted on Livernois. The applicant has removed that 6-unit and they are able to preserve an additional home. Previously, they were only preserving 2 existing homes. Now they are preserving 3 homes. They're located here, again, adjacent to Livernois. The other changes is they've removed 1 unit from each of these 3 essential townhome units and going from 6 to 5 units, and they've also removed a unit was located here from 4 to 3. So in total, they have removed a total of 9 units by removing those townhomes, but preserving an additional home site. We do note that in addition, based on some comments from the Planning Commission, they've added 3 additional T turnarounds that allow for vehicles such as either school buses that may enter that, Amazon trucks, delivery trucks, guests, et cetera, to be able to turn around in the site and go out back on Livernois. The one thing we did note that the Planning Commission should have a discussion on is the applicant is now proposing a privacy fence, a 6-foot-high fence that outlines the 3 preserved homes, and we question if that really properly integrates the existing preserved homes with the development itself by kind of excluding them through the fence. The applicant was not requested to do a formal traffic study, but they did provide a traffic review essentially by OHM, and based on the number of units, again, this was based on the original proposal of 44 units. So again, they've reduced this to a total of 35 units. But in conclusion, and the traffic engineer is here to talk in more detail, but in conclusion, the engineer notes that the traffic impact of the site on the adjacent road network is negligible and will be imperceptible to the majority of road users, because they note that in the peak times there will only be 20 cars an hour in the morning and 26 cars in the evening. So again, this would be a negligible impact on the existing road network. The Planning Commission at the last meeting noted that the applicant did not provide full rendering, floor plans, and elevations of all the unit types. They have provided that. The primary building material appears to be brick and lap siding. However, we do note that all unit types appear to be different material and color combinations, and so there's a little bit of cohesion issues that we'd ask the applicant to address with regards to architectural style and materials. I think that's kind of outlined in this slide above, which these are the 4 different types a product that the applicant's using. So you can see, there's some brick located here. It appears to be some sort of gray brick. But the architectural style are kind of different from each other. The material use are somewhat different. The color is different. And it appears from our vantage point, there's a lack of cohesion between the different styles and architectural patterns here. So we'd like the applicant to address that. And again, we don't have elevations or renderings of the 3 houses that are being preserved on site as well. The applicant did provide renderings. This is a rendering internal to the site of some of the proposed unit types. So in summary, the Planning Commission should discuss with the applicant whether they find that the applicant meets the PU standards, whether the application meets the site plan design standards, if the architectural styles, materials, and colors work together from an architectural and aesthetic standpoint, and lastly, if fencing existing homes in new development allows for site integration. If the Planning Commission recommends approval of the PUD and the preliminary development plan, we ask the following items be addressed: provide the fence details, confirm trash pickup, and provide trash circulation plan, as well as a photometric plan. I do want to note, again, to both the Planning Commission and the public, the Planning Commission is a recommending body on this matter alone. Ultimately, it's the City Council for determination whether this project gets approved or not, so you are only a recommending body. And I want to note to the public, we received, I don't know, 30 or so, at least 30 correspondence. So anything that was submitted to our office prior to today's meeting was either in the Planning Commission packet or has been handed out or distributed to the Planning Commission. So we have received a number of public input on this project already. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Mulally.
Thank you, Chairman. So for me, this is unusual because I haven't seen something like this come up before where there is a fencing request along the side of the road within a project. How common is it, and what kind of fence would they be doing behind those 3 historic homes that we are talking about?
So it's fairly uncommon to have a fence dividing a development within itself. The details of the fence were not provided. All it notes is on the plan is a 6-foot-high privacy fence. And so one of the questions we asked is, what's the fence going to look like? And how is it going to relate, again, an integration between hopefully a uniquely designed site that's one development with mixed housing types rather than isolating 3 of the historic homes from the rest of the property. But the details about what it looks like, we don't know at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Just a point of clarification. We did receive in our email a description from the Historical Society as to the background on these homes. And I can give you the Reader's Digest version. It coincides with what this Planning Commission discussed the last time is they're old, but they are not historic. So I think that's a misnomer. If someone thinks that saving these 3 homes is part of a historic development, it's not true. They're old homes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? All right, seeing none, we'll bring up Mr. Abathera to make a presentation to us and answer any questions the commission has.
Good evening, and thank you for your time this evening. I'd like to say one thing first. Oh, excuse me. First thing to say is, how about those Wolverines last night? Was that impressive? Was that good, watching them win a national championship?
Go Blue.
Go Blue, yes. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I'd also like to thank everyone for all their valuable feedback on this PUD. I have listened and taken suggestions into account as I've revised and updated the plans. I share everyone's concerns for Troy. After all, I've lived and raised my family in Troy for the past 37 years. Over the past 37 years, I volunteered as a baseball coach, soccer coach, football coach, and also currently serve as a chairman of the Troy Building Code Board of Appeals. Troy is my home, and I also want only what's best and appropriate for the city. I'd like to share a brief history of the Square Lake Livernois property. I originally purchased the 1-acre property behind John's Market. The property is currently approved by the Troy Planning Commission for 14 3-story townhomes. Following the site plan approval process, homeowners of the 4 homes facing Livernois approached me about purchasing their properties. I agreed to purchase them and originally planned on tearing them down in order to build 10-home subdivision containing houses in the 4,000 to 5,000 square foot range. After going through the homes numerous times, I recognized the charm, beauty, and historic value of some of these homes had in the Troy historic corners. I asked the Troy Planning Department what type of zoning would work best to keep some of these historic homes. The Planning Department informed me the PUD was the only viable option. Therefore, I revised the development plan to a PUD in order to retain some of the homes. At the July 26, 2022 meeting, I presented a development plan consisting of 51 units and containing 3-story buildings. The feedback was clear. The Planning Commission was frustrated with the increasing 3-story high density in the area. Commissioners said no 3-story buildings. And I agreed, went back to the drawing board, revised my plans, and removed all the 3-story units. I received additional valuable feedback at the next Planning Commission meeting on February 14, 2023. I also formally met with the homeowners in the Telford subdivision who expressed their concerns regarding the density of units. I took their feedbacks into account and reduced the number of units to keep the area from feeling too congested, reducing the number of units along the north property line by 40%. The next opportunity for feedback occurred at the November 28th Planning Commission meeting. During public comments, residents expressed that they felt the 6 units close to Livernois would be an eyesore and would not match the historic look and feel of the area. They preferred to leave the existing historic home in place. I agreed with the residents and removed the 6 units facing Livernois from the plan. This change also enabled more trees to be retained. These changes would help maintain the historic feel of the Troy historic corners. Additionally, and based on public comment feedback, 3 more units were moved from the interior of the PUD, reducing the density and opening up the area. The change also enabled us to add more sidewalks, now totaling just over 2/3 of a mile, that allows for more walkability to the remaining 3 neighborhood nodes in the area at the corners of Square Lake and Livernois. Lighting was addressed with a photometric plan with solar-powered lighting with the right balance between not being too bright and compromising the residential feel of the area, or not bright enough where it creates safety concerns. Fire, garbage, and delivery truck turnaround concerns were addressed by adding 3 international fire code compliant turnarounds in the site. There are a few other concerns I would like to address. Numerous people wrote in letters to the city questioning the amount of green space. The city ordinance requires 20% green space in the development. This PUD has 24% of the land will be green space. Another question that comes up pertains to the EVA to Square Lake. This is designed to the City of Troy standards, and there are many of these EVAs throughout our city. You can see on the screen how they are designed for pedestrian and bicycle traffic to enter them, but not for everyday vehicles. Emergency vehicles are specially educated as to their locations and how to drive through the breakaway ballards when needed. An additional comment was brought up about the city's master plan. The master plan specifically states development in the Livernois and Square Lake neighborhood node should be especially considerate of the remaining historic assets of the neighborhood, as well as adapt and reuse historic structures when possible before demolition. I've worked with the Planning Commission and residents and revised the plans taking their feedback into account. 75% of the Troy historic homes facing Livernois are being retained. Additional sidewalks will increase the walkability and contribute to a more village-like feel. The sidewalks also provide easy access to the rest of the neighborhood nodes. There are concerns Troy residents brought up as I have no control or authority over, such as existing power outages in the Telford sub, existing sanitary sewers backing up into residents' basements, street floodings after rainstorms in Sylvan Glen subdivisions, traffic and emergency vehicles cutting through existing residential streets. These are all things I have no control over. The last one the city has a list of intents they require for a PUD to align with. I will go through them now with you. The intent of the planned unit development option is to permit flexibility in the design and use of residential and non-residential land, which through the implementation of overall development plan, when applicable to the site, will encourage developments that will result in a long-term contribution to social, environmental, and economic sustainability in the city of Troy. Community is one of the most important parts of social sustainability, and the proposed development will help contribute to community greatly through the addition of sidewalks all through the PUD. These sidewalks will also connect residents to the businesses in the Troy Corner Shopping Mall outside of the PUD. Residents will be able to get to all 4 Troy neighborhood nodes for true sustainability walkability to businesses such as Pepe's, those in the Troy Corners and the hair salon. This walkability is something the planners envisioned for the intersection in their master plan. This will encourage more shopping opportunities and will help to contribute to economic sustainability. Also, there will be many common spaces within the proposed development that residents will be able to use where a sense of community can be created. This will, again, contribute to the social sustainability of the PUD. To contribute to environmental sustainability, the PUD will have solar-powered streetlights, and the units will have most up-to-date energy-efficient appliances. The number 2, permit developmental patterns that respond to changing public and private needs. As the population of Troy ages, they desire and require ranch homes for accessibility. I am building to respond to this pattern. Additionally, this PUD will provide the missing middle that Troy needs, this being homes that serve a part of the population that does not want to live in either large homes that currently make up much of the city or in rental apartments. Number 3, encourage flexibility in design and use that will result in a higher quality of development and a better overall project that would be accomplished under conventional zoning and which can accommodate without sacrificing established community values. Just like I mentioned before, conventional zoning would have simply torn down the existing homes and built a neighborhood with many large homes, ruining the feel of the historic Troy corners. Therefore, the PUD is a far superior option for its taking community opinions and values into account in saving the historic homes and creating a living community that provides the missing middle that Troy desires. 4 is providing the long-term protection or preservation of natural resources, natural features, and/or historic and cultural resources. Again, I'm preserving the historic and cultural resources by saving the majority of the Livernois homes. By reducing the density of the PUD and building only ranches and low-rise two-story condos, I will be preserving the land for far more than I went with my original plans of building a 3-story high-rise condos. Number 5 is promote the efficient use and conservation of energy. We are following this through the installation of the most recent up-to-date forms of energy in the development, as well as the usage of solar lights throughout the streets and sidewalks of the PUD. Number 6 is encourage the use, redevelopment, and improvement of existing sites where the current ordinances do not provide adequate protection and safeguards for the site or its surrounding areas, or where current ordinances do not provide the flexibility to consider redevelopment, replacement, or adaptive reuse of existing structures and sites. This intent has been met through the development of this PUD. As mentioned before, the original plan was to demolish all the existing homes and zone for 4,000 to 5,000 square foot homes. Now with this PUD, I have saved the homes and have effectively utilized the space in an appropriate way for the area. 7 was provide for enhanced housing, employment, recreation, and shopping opportunities for the citizens of Troy. Currently, the city of Troy lacks 2 major components in its existing developed areas: walkability and the missing middle of housing. In the suburbs, it is difficult to have walkable city because neighborhoods are large and businesses are usually on the outside of them. This proposed development fits this because it is within walking distance to the nearby businesses and will have sidewalks that encourage foot travel to these businesses. This promotes a walkable community and thus enhances housing, employment, recreation, and shopping opportunities for Troy citizens. Number 8 is to ensure the compatibility of designs and use between various components within the PUD and with neighboring properties and use. We worked with residents and neighboring houses to make sure the development will work seamlessly with the existing homes and have decided that to best do this, ranch homes will be built along the property line that maintain a level of privacy and do not overshadow the existing homes. If you look up, if you can see it up there, this is the existing homes on the north property line. Their height is 30 feet tall. The ranch units I propose along the north side are maximum height of 20 feet. So we're 10 feet lower than the houses that that have the same property line. We cannot look in their backyards. They can look into the backyards of the ranch units I put in. The 2-story units we're building has a maximum height of 26 feet. Once again, you can see the existing homes in Telford is a 30-foot height. So we're 4 feet lower than those houses, and we're at least 100 feet away from their houses with our closest 2-story unit. Number 9 is to ensure development that is consistent with the intent of the master plan. The City of Troy's master plan for this particular intersection wants any development to be considerate of the remaining historic assets in the neighborhood, which I am being careful to do. The historic nature of this intersection of Troy is not being sacrificed because 3 of the 4 homes on Livernois will be preserved. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for all the valuable feedback. It's helped to improve the development plans. I know the current plan is one that we can be proud of. To reiterate some of the key updates, I retained 75% of the historic homes. There are no three-story buildings on the property. Unit density was decreased by 34% from the very first day. 24% green space exceeding the City of Troy requirements. Again, I want to thank everyone for their input and feedback. And at this time, I'd like to ask for your support on this development project. Thank you. Can I answer any questions?
Mr. Krent.
I got just a couple. Excuse me. One is, these will all be owner-occupied homes. They're not rentals, correct?
They're going to be leased to own. So some could be leased, some could be owned.
Okay.
We would like to be all owned, but I don't know what the market is like.
Okay, and then the connection, you said the sidewalks connecting to businesses, so like John's Market, what, I couldn't see a connection.
Can you go to the sidewalk plan, please? Right here. So everything in red is my sidewalks that I
Okay.
put into there.
Very good.
So you can come down here to Square Lake, and John's Market is right here.
Yep. Okay, I
Is
see
right here is
now.
John's Market. We also put a sidewalk connecting between the older homes here, so that these houses here can be connected into the subdivision here. We did talk about putting a fence in here and up along here. I'm not really sure we need to put a fence up there anymore. So it was our first thing, and it probably was overlooked that it was put back in, but there is enough trees and bushes in here that we were worried about the headlights shining in the back of these houses. But with all the trees and bushes we have, we're not as worried about it anymore. So the 6-foot fence can go away.
Okay, and one final thing. Originally, 2 of the homes you were going to renovate or update. What's the status of the existing homes on Livernois? What are you going to do with them?
All 3 are going to be updated and renovated and sold.
Very nice, thanks.
Any other questions, Mr. Epithura? Yes, Ms. Malali.
A couple of points on your most latest rendition here. One, thank you for looking into a couple of concerns that us on the Planning Commission and the residents had expressed. One, you're maintaining the 3rd home, so that's nice to know. I know that was a concern that was raised. 2, you have looked into addressing the traffic flow within the development, so that's good. Although it's not completely 100% perfect, but I know you have addressed it. So I want to give you points on that as well. And the 3rd thing that is still kind of plaguing in the back of my mind, that I still need a little bit of clarification on. I walked that area and I did see that there are trees behind those homes that are currently sitting off of Livernois. But this fence is something that's not sitting well in my head. I just can't seem to picture a 6-foot fence alongside a road within a development. But I do know the value behind it, that it's going to cut down the light that's going to spill into those homes. But I cannot still wrap my head around it. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking on
As I
that?
just mentioned, Mr. Krent, we're going to remove the fence. The fence will be gone.
The fence will not be there.
Yeah, we can disregard the fence from that plan.
So there is enough tree covering and protection for the houses that they won't have a lot of lights from the cars.
You can see all the trees we're planting here that are going to block all the lights coming into the back of the houses there also. Those are all going to be planted pines, and I don't have the plan in front of me to tell you what they are, but they're probably going to be 6-foot pines that'll be growing into taller pines that will block any light shining in the back of those houses.
Okay. May I ask one more question? Sure. That central park area that you have between the 2 townhomes,
Right
what are we looking at? I mean, can you give me just a little bit of an idea? What is that space there? I do see that there is seating area, but aside from that, is that all?
That's right there, that whole area right in there, the seating area, the fire pit, and then the butterfly garden around it.
Okay. If I may, sorry.
Yeah.
In one of the, you probably already are aware about this, but you know, in the neighborhood node district, in one of section 5.06 in the zoning ordinance, page 161, the building orientation and entrance, primary entrance shall be clearly identifiable and usable, and should be located in the front facade parallel to the street. This is something that that we have also looked at in various other developments, is there a possibility for you to make that happen for those two-story homes because they are looking and facing each other? Their front entrances will be facing each other as opposed to the main street. Is there a possibility to flip those homes? I know you've reduced the units, but is there a possibility to flip those homes so they face the street?
I'm not quite sure what you mean, but you mean to turn them 90 degrees? So that the front doors face the street up here?
Yeah, something where we can make it feel more not boxy type, but more a village feel, because the title of your development is Village of Hastings, right? So I'm kind of trying to see if there can be this one central road, but all homes lined up to face the street. But everything cannot be done that way, so at least the central area there.
So this one here already faces this street here.
Correct, but the
So
two.
we could take these two and see if they could fit in this area right through here.
There will be more cohesion, according to me, in terms of how it will look, as opposed to looking at each other's cars, entrance to the doors, coming, basically looking at parking lots. You're actually giving them an opportunity to be part of the larger unit space.
The only problem is how do we get the cars in the back here to park in the back of the garages? If you're going to put all the front doors facing this street here, somewhere you got to put a road down here and across. And I'm already losing green space and saying there's not enough green space in the site. If I add another roads coming through here to get all to the back, I'm just losing more and more green space. That's one of the options is, more roads means less green space.
I understand. I know you mentioned, you gave us a figure of 24% as in terms of your open space for this unit, for this development.
I've already, if you don't mind, I want to go back, here's where one of the turnarounds are, here and here. So I talked to my engineers, let's say unit 25 gets a prime delivery truck coming in. They're going to drive down the road, they're going to park right here, they're going to walk to the unit, drop it off on the front porch, he's going to drive his truck down here, back up, and turn out and go around. And these are international fire truck regulated, so the fire trucks, the garbage trucks, the prime, UPS, everybody will use these three turnarounds right here that are safe and within the codes of everything. By removing those units, we added more sidewalk to this side to give us that center road look on, so we have sidewalk on both sides, which we didn't have before. And we have green belts here where when the snow comes, that's where the snow will get piled up there, around here, in those areas there. So we have areas for the snow getting down. And if you look right here, here, and here, that hatched area is where the garbage will be put. So these units here will put their garbage there for garbage day. These units here will put the garbage here. These units will put it outside their driveway, just like you do in a regular subdivision. So we have a garbage plan where everybody's going to store their garbage on garbage day outside.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Mr. Fox.
I just wanted to inquire and get your chance to respond to, during his presentation, Mr. Carlisle referenced that there may be some issues with the design cohesion of everything. I was curious if you could just comment on the design aspects that you guys are aiming for.
Colors?
Yeah, the colors and how everything.
Every
will
unit's
look.
going to have brick, first-story brick units. Some will have brick to the second floor. They'll all have the same lap siding. I have this laid on the side over here, so I didn't obstruct everybody's view. And we'll have the lap siding and then the black shingles. So we were going with the same color for everything in there, unless you feel it needs to be broken up with different colors.
Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, thanks for coming back, and I want to commend you for really listening and trying to address everyone's concerns, because not all the developers do that, and you've been very patient, and I do appreciate that. I wanted to ask, I have a few questions, and I also wanted to piggyback a little bit about what Ms. Malala-Holly mentioned about the orientation of the homes. Are you familiar at all with the Enclave, which is at the corner of John R. and Waddles?
Yes, driven through that.
Yep.
Can you pull it up, Brent?
I don't have it.
Oh,
So that development, from what I understand, is about the same acreage, and they, I think, are about the same units that you're proposing here. But the difference is that their units are all sort of what Ms. Malala Holly was saying, they have their front doors on a road. So I think I think it can be done. I think it's going to take a new vision and some creativity, but I think, I don't have a problem with I think everyone can agree that we don't want 3 stories. I think the ranches are something that people in Troy are looking for, and so I think that's great. But I do think that we could use attached housing like duplexes, 3plexes, 4plexes, whatever you want to call them. So I wouldn't mind if you wanted a little bit to maintain some density to have 1, 2, 3, basically units 1 through 8 be attached. But I would recommend not having the row houses that for me, it's that door that goes to nowhere. I would turn them so they're part of the neighborhood, part of the street, and like the Enclave, just be regular duplexes, whether they're 2-story or a ranch or a mix, that would be great. That's really what I would see here. And then the other thing is, I'm not really sure if you reduce some of that density, whether that detention basin is needed at that point, but you could, turn it in and, add some homes down there. And also, I know that you're thinking about eventually expanding to the east, so you can always leave the street with one side of houses, and then, if you're able to acquire more property, you would just continue that development in a less dense way, which would maintain the feel that I think a lot of people are hoping for. I do have a question about the I know we're talking about 3 homes, but have you ever given any consideration, given that those homes are in the nodes, to instead of renovating them into homes, actually renovate them for a business purpose? So for example, it could be an ice cream parlor or pizza parlor or something that would bring people in, walkability, maintain that feel, but get some traction and movement there, but preserving that feel. I think that could go a long way to this development. And I'll let you answer that, but I just want to make one more comment because we received that letter late today from the woman from the Troy Historical Society. And, she mentioned some frustration, I think, that other developers haven't come to talk to her and get her advice, and she appreciated you doing that, and I appreciate you doing that. But I think the sum of her frustration might have been from the fact that we've already demolished some of those homes or removed those homes, and I think it's great that you want to preserve them. But I think to talk about whether or not they're protected or not, I think everyone in this room, and from when I went on those neighborhood node walks, and I know you know it too, because you were there and you care and you've been a resident of Troy, and I know you want to preserve it. It's the feel that the people want of that, the Troy corners and the history that was there. So that's really what we're going for. So I think we've come a long way. I know it's frustrating because we go back and forth. This happened with the development that hasn't yet come, but that's coming on Long Lake and Crooks. We went back and forth 6 or 7 times, but I think everyone agreed that we got it right. So I don't think there's anything wrong with taking our time to get it right, but I really would love to hear your thoughts on what we could do with those homes and maybe considering turning them into businesses, and then creating more of what's the Enclave really is what I'm going for, to make it a little bit less dense, but still providing the missing middle and with an idea for the future of what's coming to the east.
Okay, you gave me a lot of things there. I hope I don't forget them all. First of all, the property to the north is not in the neighborhood node. It is all R1B. So the neighborhood node stops right here. This is where the neighborhood node is. So every time there's a walk and talk about the neighborhood node, it's this property here. This property is just zoned R1B. It has nothing to do with the neighborhood node, and I'm not trying to get it zoned to neighborhood node. So that's why I'm going for the PUD. The signs you see and the neighbor response I get from everybody is they want to save, and I know some people up here don't think they're historic. They call Save Troy Historic Homes. There's websites, there's social media everywhere. I'm just trying to do what the neighbors want by saving the homes. I don't know if turning it into an ice cream store is really the way to answer. of when you read everything, what everybody wants in there. I can look into that and see if we could do something like that. The enclave, is there a way you can pull up the enclave, or do you need your clicker back? The only reason I'm saying is the enclave, as I look at it from the aerial, it is all 6-unit buildings, and half the units aren't on the roads. They are just long driveways that go in the back there. They're not like every unit has a driveway coming onto the main road, and they have 0 in that place. There's 20% open space, there's a sidewalk, and there's driveways. There's no guest parking, there's no park, there's no sitting areas, there's nothing in it. When you really kind of look at it from the aerial view, you'll see it's just pine trees and houses and concrete. There's no amenities at all in it. Now, I reduced all these units up here after I met with the neighbors in the subdivision, and I'm trying to appease everybody, and we reduced the number from, I think I had 12 or 13 units at the time, down to 8, because they suggested less units to make it feel less open. I also have the ranch units that the enclave doesn't. They're all 2 stories. I mean, we can go all 2 stories and load up all this area here to keep the same density, but I'm kind of getting away from trying to save what everybody wants. They want low density, and they want ranches and keeping away from the other houses. So I don't mind coming back, trying a different plan if I get more feedback from you guys up here. But my only thing is, as you know, is I have this unit here. Stephen, can you go back to this neighborhood node right here and showing the subdivision up here in the future? Can you click it to where it shows, keep going, right there. So this has been approved by the Planning Commission. I have to start this June 12th. I have all my stuff in the city. I have to pay for it all because it's when my time expires. If you want me to come back with something in here, I need another extension because I can't lose this if I don't get everything approved. And if I'm looking at it, I either have to build these 14 and these 10, or I want to build my PUD. This is going on 5 years, and I want to do what's best, and I will do it, but I do need to have assurance that I would get an extension on this from this board right here to do that while we work on designing something different that we can all, as I say, we can all come together, if that's something this board wants to do.
Can I respond? Yeah. Okay. So after going on that neighborhood node walk, I think what was interesting to me is that there wasn't any one plan that the neighbors wanted. It wasn't like they had this vision and this is what we want. And I think that's the tricky part for this area. Mm-hmm. So I totally feel for you. This is very difficult. But I'm wondering if, I guess you're not going to please everybody. I think we all know that. Not everybody's going to be happy, but maybe the idea, and I understand why you turned those northern properties into ranches and you made it less dense, but what resulted was making the southern part of the property or the development way more dense. So perhaps if we just made the whole thing medium density, like the attached houses, and relatively low, it would be a good compromise. And then maybe, I was just throwing out the idea of turning those homes into businesses, and I guess as part of a PUD, I believe that there can be something done. I know it's not in the neighborhood node and it's zoned R1B, but perhaps if you came back with a plan for those and the neighbors like that idea or could give you ideas. I mean, I threw out ice cream shop, pizza parlor, maybe it's a real estate company or a dentist's office, whatever. But I think that I'd really like to see you take another try at it with a little bit more community input. And now that I know it seems like we're far away, but I do think we're getting closer because I think now the conversation is a little bit more, we all understand we're trying to maintain this feel of that.
And I've been saying that from day one.
Yep.
But what about extension? What do I need to do that? Because I can't allow this to go back to the vacant land. So
that's going to be a question for the planning department, but I do want to just ask you, you don't have to answer, but would you really build a 3-story, would you really build that?
I am a developer, and I bought the property to develop. I mean, some people have been born and raised to be attorneys, realtors, different things. I was born as a developer. My family's been developing. I'm teaching my boys how to build and develop, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And we will build and develop that. And that's why I'm here, is I do not want that.
I know.
I call this option A.
Yeah.
And I call option B my other thing, and there is no option C. It's going to be A or B. And I don't want it. I'd like to do what you just said and get some more input. I mean, if you think it's too dense, I'm at, Brent, am I right now at 5.8 units per acre?
Yeah, Gary and I were having a brief conversation about the enclave versus this, just in terms of density and numbers. I think this is proposed to be 35 units on 6 acres, and the enclave, I think, is 36 units on 6.6. So I think this density is around 5.8 per acre, and the enclave is around 5.5 or 5.6. It's pretty close. There's some differences, as Mr. Abathira mentioned. Can I speak to the extension issue just really briefly? So brief history for everyone. The 14 townhomes received preliminary site plan approval in 2018. In Troy, preliminary site plan, you have 3 years to submit to final engineering from the date of approval. So it was approved in 2018. 2021, Gary approached me asking for an extension. COVID hit and the world changed. And I was fortunate enough that I had a job there where I was able to be just as effective working remotely when the City Hall was closed. But I don't take that for granted. I'm very blessed to be able to not impact my life. The development community was devastated because not only were they not allowed to work, there was, coming out of COVID, the material costs went through the roof. There was supply issues, labor changed, lending industry changed. It dramatically impacted the development community. So when a developer, we had more requests than typical for extensions. Gary is not the only one that we granted an extension to. So he came in 2021 before it expired and said, "Can I extend?" And I granted the extension, serving as zoning administrator until 2022, June 2022. In May 2022, Gary submitted final engineering plans. So he met the criteria, extended the site plan, but he has not completed final engineering. He requested the project to be on hold because he wants to do this instead of that. But he doesn't want to give up his entitlement to do it. So he's asked for 3 extensions. 3, I think, is the most extensions. And I told him, we're getting to a point where, when's too many extensions too many? So I said, after 3, we're going to have a discussion because I'm going to have to bounce, really consider this. Gary, can I mention your challenges of your medical?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
He's also, I'm also a human being. Gary's been in the hospital over, what's the number now, 60 days?
60 days.
Something like that. So there's also a human element. I'm a human being, and I like to think that I have a soul. So that also, besides the other changes due to COVID, that came into the mix. So I thought it was the right thing to do to grant him 3 extensions, okay? So I told him it would be great by June, because you've got engineering plans, to either get this wrapped up, and then you don't have to worry about that. But if this gets extended, now he's going to have to seek another extension. So that's what he was trying to explain.
Mr. Beekner.
So I think a question for Brent. Am I hearing this right? That's Plan A, and the other one we saw is Plan B. Is Plan A already approved?
So he's got entitlement for the 14 townhomes, and what he's showing in the R1B, if this is, I'm going to speak for you if you don't mind.
Yes, you may.
If I misspeak, please correct me.
Okay.
So if the PUD gets approved, developers develop, as you just said. So he's going to do what he can do by right. He's already got approval for the 14, and he'd come back with something that looks reasonably like this and get 10 units. So 14 plus 10 is 24 by my math. And he's proposing 35. So this sounds like it's Plan B. He's not before the Planning Commission this evening with this.
Right. I just want to make sure everybody in the room
This is not under consideration tonight.
Yeah.
Not.
But he could do this if he wanted to.
Correct.
If he meets all the requirements of the City of Troy zoning ordinance and other laws, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Parakis.
So I'm not exactly sure where we stand now with the procedural part, but I guess what I wanted to say to you, Mr. Abathira, is I don't want you to even worry about Plan A, because I don't think we're going to go down that road.
Okay.
I think that you have a great start to a Plan B, and I don't think anyone on this planning commission doesn't want you to build something or is saying, you know, just keep it a grassy area. We all know that developers have rights, and we just want to get it right. And that's why I would say I wouldn't really, it's not like, I mean, there's no agenda of trying to delay you so you lose it. And again, I don't know, maybe we do grant the extension. I don't know how this works, but I just think that with a little bit more time and input, and I get it, we've done it already a lot, but I think we're getting a lot closer quickly right now. And I think that if we just take more time to, you can come back to and work with the planning department. I think we can, I mean, I know you have a team of people who also, you know, are behind you, and you can, and ask them to work with you on this and try to bring us something that, I think, where I was going before with the neighborhood node walk is I think people don't know exactly what they want, but we definitely, people know what they don't want, right? And that was those three-story condos,
exactly.
right? So we definitely don't want to go down that road. So I think it's going to take a little bit of work to try to find out what feels right.
So I'll tell you what would help me a lot is if everybody in the commission, we could just speak frankly on it, is as a city, we would like to see more ranch units. And I know city council wants to. We don't need more 4,000 and 5,000 square foot houses. Is that a true statement? You guys agree? Okay. Ranch units are the way things are going into. If you think, and people think this is too dense, what's the number we think, so I know where to work at? I'm at 35. Is 32 the number to work at? Do I need, you know, I know people like to say 2, but, you know, we can't. What's the number that you guys can live with that I can work on to try to get it to?
As far as the units, I don't think there's a magic number. For me, you know how I feel about the doors.
Yep.
I'd love to see, if you just Google duplex and put images, they basically all have a garage with a front door next to it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Just not doors to nowhere.
Okay.
And you
I
can
totally
be
understand
more dense, you can attach them, but just have it make sense.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Tagle.
I'm sorry, I was pointing.
I want to thank you for the efforts you've made over the years, listening, modifying, adjusting. I do not align with some of the comments that have been made tonight by my fellow commissioners from a professional standpoint. Converting an old residential single-family home into a commercial building is maybe even not possible. They don't understand what building codes are going to be imposed upon you to do that. Number 2, I don't agree with, I'd rather come out my front door and look at a street than I would rather come out my front door in a more safe environment, look at a courtyard, look at a gazebo. We've talked about at this commission numerous times about safety, about kids coming out and having a more safe environment to come out their front door as opposed to it being located on a street versus located on a cul-de-sac or a garden area or something like that. So those are the two of the points I don't agree with. The other thing is, I think sometimes we get a little bit beyond what you are the developer. You are the person that has to put something on the market that's going to sell. I understand how we have to appreciate the setting, the neighborhood, and all of that, and I think you've gone over and above what most developers that have come in front of this body have tried to do in understanding that. But to sit here and to tell you your density should be this, or your density should be that, or this building should be a commercial building instead of a residential building, or your front door should be on a street versus on a garden area, I just think is beyond what we should be doing. And from a professional standpoint, I think the approach you've got here is the best thing I've seen that you've come before us yet. You've listened. You've saved another home. One of my comments at the last meeting was that the way that 6-unit development between the two residential homes was there, it didn't fit for me.
Right.
But you've left the residential unit there. So I'm supportive of what you've got presented in front of us tonight, and we'll see where it goes.
All right, Mr. Faison.
Similar to Mr. Tagle, excuse me, I'd like to commend you on the work you've done and the modifications you've made. I think there's a lot of units, and density is an issue and a concern, but I think it's offset by certain things like the green space, the variety of housing units and housing types, and also kind of the walkability that connects it to the rest of the neighborhood now. So I'm generally supportive, but it would be great if there was the ability to have more green space in this, just because of the number of units that are going in there. But generally, I'm supportive of what you brought forward.
More green space. If you go taller, you get more green space, but we don't want that.
Right.
Just
It's Ms. Malala-Holly.
Once again, as I mentioned earlier, you've done a lot of work in improving it, because I know you want to create something here in this area that everybody is happy about, and people will come through those doors wanting to be in those homes and those apartments. So I'm undeniably not saying that you haven't worked at all. I would still give you more points if you can kindly look into how you can reduce the density in the southern end of this property. I would still, I'm not going to say challenge you, but I would like to empower you into thinking if there is a possibility to do that. And I still would like to see those two units facing this way, so it feels like a village feel. The cohesiveness will come together much better, like we know when we had those units sitting between the two homes and how we felt that there was no cohesiveness. I am positively assured that by doing that, you might be able to come up with a much more robust village feel that you can create. That being said, yes, you have addressed so many of those issues, so I'm not going to think, but reducing the density a little bit, you have seen that place. I'm sure you have seen what the peak traffic looks like. We cannot do anything about it. We cannot go widen the roads. We cannot do anything, okay? All we can do is try to lessen the traffic density. If we create a less denser area, we create less traffic on the road. Again, I go back to the statement that I made the last time we talked. There is a pre-K school, there is Martell Elementary, there is Smith Middle School. Any family, young family that moves into that, say even if they don't have children, but they are wanting to have children in the future, they want to come here because 14 years of a child's life is going to be spent by the parents within 0.25 mile radius, okay? So you are going to sell. This is a hot place, this is a very well-situated area, library is closed, schools are closed, parks not that close, but still accessible, the trails are down the road in Sylvan Glen. There is a lot happening here. So I can assure you, if you come down in density, you're only going to help people who are already living there to exit onto Livernois and Square Lake with not worrying about the standing traffic. And I am witness to that. I don't want to keep bringing that up, but I will tell you, Martell and Smith, I cannot get out of my subdivision. If either I get out before the traffic starts, which is 8 o'clock in the morning, or after 8:17 a.m. That is the time, that is what I have timed. And I cannot get onto Livernois at all. So I've stopped doing that. There's no point, because I'm going to either be blocked by parents dropping their kids off or the school buses. So I have now taken a diversionary route. I go on Square Lake, and then I get on Rochester, and then I make my journey onward. It's okay. I'm just one person doing it, so that's perfectly fine. But when we try to reduce the density, we try to assist people in good traffic movement. As I said, we cannot do anything about the roads, so let's at least look into that. That would be my humble request to you today.
Okay.
But all in all, as I mentioned, I repeat myself, you have worked with us, you have worked with the residents, you've listened to us, and I appreciate you sincerely for that.
So the two things. I agree with you that in the morning you can't get on the Square Lake. I sat in the church parking lot yesterday morning at 10 minutes to 8 and counted 47 cars in 10 minutes, make a right-hand turn, drop their kids off, come right back out. And as you said, 8:17, there's not a car in sight. It's people that have to take their kids to school. One kid in the car, they drop them off. And if we use school buses like we have the buses, that wouldn't be an issue. I don't know what the answer is, like maybe a no left turn from 8 to 8:30 might stop it and make people go the other route, but I don't know how you get people to drive, to let their kids take a bus to school rather than drive them, because you could just see the cars, boop, boop, boop. It was just a constant turnaround in there.
It is pretty clogged. You're
Yes.
absolutely.
But it's society we live in now that's going to do that. If you notice though, those units here, this is all office buildings. So I just tucked most of this area here behind the office buildings, so you're not seeing it from Square Lake over here.
Yeah.
You're hidden back behind there with all that in there. So people, I keep hearing density, density. We've kept the density back right next to the office. So I will look at the density part of it and see if there's something that can be done on it, but it's going to get to a point where I'm going to look at which one is going to be more profitable too. And I don't want to sound like I'm just out for the dollar, but I have to look at what's the best choice for me and what I can do it as. And, I'm not saying I'm not doing it. I will look into it.
Sure, thank you, I appreciate it.
Mr. Fox.
So two quick things. First off, an opinion. Second off, a question for the developer. First off, on the opinion, I actually think the density sits just fine right here. I don't know if there needs to be a conversation about cutting density down. That's just my take. I think you've yourself voluntarily cut enough units out of this whole project, and I think overall it sits at a good number at the moment. My question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, my guess would be, so the green space between units 23 through 18, if you see kind of the diagonal I'm drawing, the goal of that and the purpose of designing it in the way that you did would be to create a community gathering space where things like barbecues, outside events, grad parties, birthdays, they have a built-in space that's shielded from busy roads, that's surrounded by a community that ideally cares about this family or person that's celebrating in this courtyard. And that was kind of the goal, was to create like a community-focused area where all of the front doors face out into this courtyard.
Correct.
Okay. So that was my understanding, and I think that is a fantastic idea. I don't think putting the doors on a road in particular would help encourage the community feel in the way that design, I see it encouraging the community to get together and actually say hello to your neighbors instead of getting out and just heading up to work.
We have the same thing on this right here with an open space here, which, this is 5 units will have this whole area here, 10 units will have this whole area right in here.
See, and that's my thing, I've grown up in a lot of types of houses, and the houses that I felt like I was the most connected to my community were the houses where it wasn't necessarily all just leading out onto roads. It was the ones where you had to walk around people's houses to get where you were going. And that's just how you meet people, and that's how you meet your neighbors. So I am a fan of the way that the doors are currently oriented so that they encourage people to get together before heading along their way.
Could I ask Ms. Barakas a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does that help some of your thoughts on that, or no? Because Because the other thing I want to bring up was, you're familiar with Kilmer and Big Beaver. There's a PUD that's done right there, and there's a Tabella sub, and behind it, I think there's 20 condos there. And 12 or 6 of them face right onto Kilmer Road. The road's right there, the front door's right there, and you basically come out that front door and you're right on the Kilmer Drive. There's 4 feet of grass, sidewalk, parking spot, Kilmer Drive. And I do have to admit that this is a better way of having the front doors, meeting front doors away from a road. And I do understand your thoughts of garages to front doors also, like I do have on the ranches. It's just a matter of opinion as to what it is.
I understand. What about no one brought up properties 9 through 14, where their doors lead to nowhere.
Hold on. 9 through 14 has all this area back here. So you could call it a front door to nowhere, but your front door is not facing the road. You are.
Understood.
Yeah.
But I would venture to say that the majority of people who have a front door like that, even the ones who are facing the courtyard, aren't using their front door. They're driving into their garages, and they're shutting their garages and going in.
I don't use my front door at home unless someone rings the doorbell at night, and you're going, who's at the front door? And you're kind of looking at your cameras to see who's at the front door because you don't expect someone to be there. So our front doors aren't like they used to be 40, 50 years ago. People come home and they pull in their garage, they hit their automatic buttons, go in, close them, and boom. And when you have guests or friends coming over, everybody texts everybody that they're on their way over, so you know who's coming over to your house already. So doorbells don't even work hardly anymore because you got a text that some driving on your road right now. And mostly when my kids were younger, the front door opened, the friends would be, and I go, I didn't even hear a doorbell. And they're like, oh, they texted us, we're here. So it's a changing area. I don't know how else to describe it.
Any more questions for Mr. Abathira? Great. Do you have a seat? While we did have our public hearing in November, we still welcome public comment tonight, but I would encourage you maybe to bring forth new comments because we heard everyone at the last meeting. Also reiterate, no clapping tonight. I did see the post on the Save Troy Corners Facebook page in which Mr. Williams encouraged non-vocal expressions of support for the speaker. So regardless of whether you use a royal wave or a thumbs up, I have little doubt that the commission knows how most of you in attendance here feel about this proposal. So I would encourage you to bring up new information. Remind you there's a 3-minute time limit with a 1-minute warning. Mr. Savinet has control of the colored device here. And this is not an opportunity for questions and answers, but if there are questions that you pose after the public comment is done, then we will try to address these either from city staff or a commissioner point of view. And also one correction, it was said in the Facebook post that this is your last shot at having your voices heard. That's not true. Regardless of what we do tonight, it goes on to city council and you have the opportunity to comment at the city council meeting as well. So with that, is anyone would like to address the commission? This is your opportunity to come forward. Yes, sir, come on up.
Before I start, so just to clarify for me and maybe everybody else out here, what has already been approved? That Plan A?
That's correct. That's Plan A, the one that was approved back in 2018. That's correct.
How does that overlay on what is being proposed?
We'll answer your question after after public comment is done.
Okay. That has to be clarified because that can be made, can be done right now, because as far as I'm hearing. The only thing I am going to reiterate something that I brought up last time, and I'm going to reiterate it again because I go out on Livernois every day, and so does everybody else that lives in my neighborhood. And there is so much congestion out there now during rush hour, but mainly a little bit south at the Martell School, as this young lady here brought up. People trying to get there, you cannot get past there. They are lined up on the road. Moms bringing their kids to school. You know, the builder said, well, maybe it's only one person in the car and maybe we could figure out another way. You figure out another way that they're going to get the kids to school, because that road is jammed up and you cannot get south or north during when school is beginning and when school's ending, okay? And that's going to be a mess out there, and all they're going to do is add to the mess, okay? That's the only thing I've got left to add, but it's important we know what has been approved.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can you ask the
Oh, yes.
gentleman?
Make sure you sign in on the sheet there.
And state your name, please, sir.
David Cole.
If you have public comment, you can go ahead and line up. That'll save some time, so feel free to get in line.
Mr. Lambert, can I clarify this?
Yes.
This is a drawing that's in the applicant's PowerPoint. The 14-unit townhome development to the south has been approved. the applicant has the right to build this. The 10 units shown on the top above it has not been approved, has not been submitted. This is just a drawing provided by the applicant to show what he has the rights to do under existing zoning. The 14 has been approved, the 10 to the north has not been approved, he's not seeking approval tonight.
I realize that.
Okay, I just wanted.
This could be built without
Could be
any
built,
further. Okay.
yes.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Joey Colby. I live at 5125 Shady Creek. I just want to commend the developer. This is really fantastic stuff. I wish it was higher density. I think that, we're talking about ice cream shops. There's over almost a dozen within the general area. Pizza parlors, there's almost a dozen. We want to be sure that we're in touch with local Troy businesses and the needs of the people. We need housing, and we need it badly. And I am a fervent believer that 35 is too low. I would like to see higher. There are a number of universities nearby with up-and-coming graduates that are coming out, and me working in higher ed, I can tell you that there are a lot of people that want to live in Troy that are priced out, and having higher density will allow for more younger professionals like myself to buy a house. And I would buy one of your properties. So you did good work, and so you have a lot to be proud of. So that's all that I got today. Thank you.
Make sure did you fill out?
I'll fill it out, yeah, sorry.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Sheila Shomo. I live on Fredmore, so just across, not Aspinwall, down Aspinwall, but across Livernois. A couple of comments that I want to bring up that are different from what I had said last time is I think we also need to consider the development of the whole corner in relation, right? We're developing this one area, but we're also developing that corner of Troy. And so there are 2 office buildings that have gone up within the last 5 years, in addition to the 3-story condos. I don't know if you guys have driven by, but there's that new law office building that's like 6 feet from my dentist's office. And then there's one going up right on the other side of my dentist's office building that I think is planned to be relatively similar. So, and those are taking what was considered or what was previously vacant properties. And so it wasn't replacing something and making something new, it was adding to it. And so this is also adding to that corner. And so thinking, I know only part of it is in the neighborhood node, but the reason of today's meeting is to consider whether it should be single family home residential zone or PUD zone, which would allow this. I think this is just adding overall to the clutter of the corner. I think keeping the existing houses is fabulous. The ranch homes, improvement, right? But I think the comments on the southern side of it being too developed and using those front yards between those 2 row homes, it seems unlikely ever, with it being only a 25-foot wide. I would call that maybe not a park, but a road of grass. That's actually skinnier than the road. So I don't see much activity happening there, maybe, but I don't see much. And the fact that T-turns are needed everywhere really interrupts the flow of everything. If you go into our neighborhoods, they're all winding roads. It's really kind of a different feel to it, which in my mind sort of proves that it's too dense of a development. Additionally, in terms of the traffic, turning right into it, I understand there's a little bit of a dip out there where folks could turn right and not really too much interrupt the flow of traffic on Livernois, but coming south and turning left into the development, it is between Aspinwall and Square Lake, and there is no jut out that you would normally see on when we have like a 2 or 3 lane road, and there's no possible way to do that without severely impacting, or you take away the front yard of the rest of the neighbors, you just can't do that. So I feel like that's a little bit of an issue for myself as well. Additionally, I have to be quick. The design of the homes, I'm not necessarily worried about different colors unless they clash, but the charm of our neighborhood is that every home is different. And not just the row homes look different than the ranches. If you go down the ranch homes, they're all different, but they're all cohesive. You can tell my neighborhood was built in the 60s, but you can have a unique identifier for your home. And finally, the wildlife in the area. One of the great things about our neighborhood is we have lots of existing green space, more than 24%. But in my backyard alone, I have deer, fox, coyotes, which may or may not be a nuisance, turkeys, owls, possums, all the way down the line, right? And so we take away a lot of those trees, and that goes away as well, which is part of the charm. So, thank you. I was nervous about getting that all in time. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Just a few things that I want to talk quick on. There were no floor plans mentioned for the attached condos provided. The photometrics were not submitted, which I know that was very important, that Mr. Fox mentioned last time. So that was not provided. I also want to say that Ms. Prokis and Mrs. Malahali, I totally agree with you on the front yard space and the backyard space and flipping it. There's no way to go. The kids are going to play in the parking lot and in between the cars doing whatever it is, street hockey, basketball, if they can fit a hoop in their driveway. So I 100% agree with you, with your suggestions. As a parent, I would love a front yard and a backyard, but I know these are townhouses. But there needs to be something better because it only looks like 18 to 27 are beneficial of that one space, 32 to 28 aren't, and then 14 to 9 aren't. I also want to go back many moons ago when I went to a planning meeting and I talked about how and I've said it before, the I's aren't dotted and the T's aren't crossed, and the townhomes that he was originally approved on, which is expiring on June 12th, he does not have road access. If that has changed, I would like to know. But as of right now, on the current plan, it is shown as an EVA. So either way, he still does not have approval for engineering and does not have the right amount access. I think he's supposed to have 28, he has 26. So either way, he cannot get off of Square Lake. It's blocked. And I think that was it for me. Yep. Easy one this time.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi. I'm Ann Coleman. I own 6091 Livernois. I'm directly across from the historic homes that Gary has said that he wants to preserve, which I thank you very much for. And I really appreciate this conversation and the back and forth, as frustrating as it might be, because we are community. Everybody in this room is community. And one of the things that the master plan states is that that the neighborhood node has currently served its purpose of bringing, quote, residents of 4 neighborhoods together, and that's what we have tonight. So I like the idea that we're going to continue to work together to get it right. I'd like to just comment or go back to what's stated in the neighborhood nodes and what was established by the survey in 2023 that is now in the master plan. And that is that 62% of neighbors reported that they felt the node had been developed to be, quote, too dense. 62% already feel it's too dense. Second, 54% of neighbors reported that they want to see single-family residential. I think this is black and white in the master plan under neighborhood nodes that states clearly what the intent of this corner is and what the will of the citizens or the neighbors in this area are. I also want to point out that Article 11, Section 11.1, number 3 of the zoning ordinance states that I'm sorry, it's number 9, states that PUD should be, quote, consistent with the intent of the master plan, and that it is, quote, not intended to be used as a device for avoiding zoning requirements. So I'm asking tonight that you vote no on the PUD because I view this as an attempt to avoid the current zoning requirements. Tonight has been very helpful. Again, I hope we can continue to move along. Here's my questions that I think that are really important to answer before you can vote on this, and that is, 1, I'd like verification, I could not find it when I was looking, of whether or not we can widen Livernois or not. If you guys widen Livernois, I'm pretty sure my house I'd be forced out. I have very little frontage on my front. Please look at 6091 Livernois. Come by, knock, say hi. Next, the next question is, you said we don't have control over the infrastructure. Has the planning department looked at infrastructure, and is there a plan inside the master plan to assess the electrical and the drainage infrastructure?
Your time is up, I'm sorry.
All right.
Good points.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Dawn Collins. I live at 317 Lesdale Drive. I am a few blocks north on the east side of Livernois from this potential development. I was born and raised in Royal Oak, and 8 years ago I moved out here because of the way the neighborhood is. It's spacious. I have a ton of land on my property. I am in a ranch, and I could not find that in Royal Oak for a reasonable price. And that's why I've come out here. I love Troy. I love this area. And because of all the people in these rooms or in this room are from 4 different neighborhoods, I love the community. And I just feel like this is way too much for our corner. I myself, as Ann had mentioned, am very concerned about the drainage, the civil engineering infrastructure in this area. We're already having problems with the electrical grid and with the water everywhere. My yard is completely flooded every spring, whether we get rain or not. So this is concerning to me that we're just throwing in more buildings and cement in this area. So I just wanted to mention that. The green space is very important to us and the ranches. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. My name is Christopher Sabota, and I live in Sylvan Glen subdivision. I'll put my name and address on the record. Thanks for the ability to provide comment tonight. And if this comment has already been discussed in past meetings, I'm a little late to the party and I forgot my laser pointer, but if it's already been discussed, please tell me to stop. But I would like to address what I see in this plan is a big elephant that people haven't thought about, and that's that sports court. Has it been addressed? The pickleball court? Is that what I read?
We'll answer your question afterwards.
Okay. Well, I would like to place on the record that I believe the pickleball court will create a nuisance in the neighborhood. I know pickleball's popular. No one get mad at me here, but I would like to share a personal story. My wife has a property in the Dryden Township, Michigan. Our neighbors, good friends, have pickleball court. We can hear pickleball from approximately 1/4 to 1/2 mile, the pings. I did also want to let you know and share some headlines with this commission. Just a few headlines. Pickleball noise lawsuits, of course. Homeowners are increasingly taking legal action over pickleball. That's from kpbs.org. Homeowner are shattered nerves, sleepless nights, pickleball noise is driving everyone nuts. So this is a neighborhood. This is my neighborhood. So what I would like to say is there's a great possibility at my address in Sylvan Glen that I'll hear ding, 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 pickleball court. And I can tell you, when I went to school, we talked about hazardous waste, and they talked about not in my backyard. My neighbors here have the right to quiet enjoyment of their properties, just as I do. So I urge you not to approve a PUD with a pickleball court right in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you. Make sure you're good. Oh, that's somebody else's cup, I think, so.
My name is Melissa Zalewski. I'm also in Sylvan Glen. First, I'd like to say thank you in regards to the historic home. That is very important. Some people believe that it can be 50 years. They believe that it's special elements that are in the home or a historic person. There's a lot of different things that can create a historic, and I appreciate you taking that into account. I also believe, like some of my fellow citizens, that there has been a lot added to Troy Corners, and with more coming in, I am concerned. While I can appreciate the reducing of the density, I also believe that if we've started too high, reducing it down still doesn't get us where we need to be. And I also appreciate the fact that you've taken time and you've sat in that church parking lot and you have seen the horrendous traffic that happens there in the morning. And yes, it is concentrated quite a bit during that time at 817. I would disagree with you to say that it's gone at 817. And I have a question that for Mr. Carlisle, and I realize it can't be answered now, but I would like to know, for this traffic study, you said that it wasn't put on, that it had to be done. So the items that we saw, was that provided by the developer? Because looking at this and seeing 20 cars possibly added, that we have 2 or 3 cars leaving our house every morning. I can't think that we are alone in Troy where we have that. So to me, 20 cars for a development this size seems a bit small, and I would like to know where those numbers are actually coming from, and if it's something that is accurate. Right now on Livernois and also on Square Lake, we see a lot of people going into the left-hand turn, and they are crossing well before that solid line. I know because I did it, and I was quickly corrected. But it's a safety issue, and I never realized how much of a safety issue it is for people coming this way not seeing. And you know, that was 14 years ago, and I see it every day. And I don't think that we're really taking into account the traffic, and we've got kids in these cars. I moved to Sylvan Glen because of Martell and because of Smith, and it is walking, and it's fantastic. And my last concern is the lease to own portion of this. My second question is, if it's lease to own, do they have to follow through on that process? Can they just lease and maybe not follow through on the process? And are we truly looking at a rental opportunity? So those are my questions. Thank you.
I feel like I should be receiving communion. Raised Catholic, I have that thing. Brevity, be bright, be brief, be gone. And that's something my 98-year-old father taught me. I read the book, the Bible, and it says, you seek first to understand, then be understood. I do have a lot of heart for Gary and the development. I just don't believe, listening to all of my neighbors, that this is the location for this particular thing. Based upon what we've talked about regarding traffic and all the other issues, which you are all aware of, and I don't want to take up any more of your time because we know this is not an easy job. When it comes to the planning, that's your job. That's really where it's at. And you're hearing the outcries of neighbors here who really say, God, we live in it. Do you not get it? And all I'm really asking you to do is, again, and we're entrusting you, we know you'll do the right thing. All we're saying is no PUD here. If there was another area, something that had 2 street access, something that allowed the streets in the other part of the neighborhood to access this, would really be good. But we're feeling like you're forced to do this because he already got approval for this. And as he had stated last time, well, he's going to do what he's going to do. And that just kind of shocked us. Like, really? You're not even thinking about how we really feel as neighbors who want to support you? So for that reason, like I said, I'm not going to tell you how to do your jobs because I can't. I do not envy you in any way, shape, or form. I think what you've done is you've got a lot of good information. And again, rather than being redundant, all we're really saying here is please, hey, if we keep trimming this process and it forms out to be good, great. But the traffic we're talking about, and this is putting the cart before the horse, is in the development process. And he said he has to go by June 18th, or there's a drop dead date. That problem is not going to be that brief. It will be a long-term project. You're going to have buses, but not before buses even arrive. You're going to have construction, and I can't get out of Aspinwall sometimes to go north to see my father. So we all have little stories that way, but again, we're going to step back and let you do what you have to do. But we're all really here just to unite and say, hey, you guys got a tough work ahead of you. We appreciate you keeping reconsider, and we're not against the, really a development because it's going to happen. We just want you to consider, hey, based upon what we have in all the areas of Troy, just this location just really doesn't seem to be feasible. And like I said, we all expect housing. We know things will grow. Just this PUD is just not going to be convenient for this area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Melton. I am the former owner of 6096 and 6112, two of the properties that Gary is saving. I've also restored two other 100-year-old homes in Troy, so probably no one in this room likes old houses more than me. And I'm really happy about that. The one he did choose to take down was built in the 50s, but in an older style, so I don't feel like we're getting a huge loss there. What I would like to bring up is the fact that my former neighbors to the north in Telford Ridge didn't like when I had meadow and woods in the backs of my properties, and I would get constant letters, complaints from the HOA saying that it was a breeding ground for mice, rats, snakes, and I would get constantly turned into the police to cut my lawn. So in your words, you can't make everybody happy, and people should be careful what they wish for. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for your time and your service to the city, and you have nerves of steel to listen to everybody, so thank you. And to Gary for his time, I can't imagine where his tab is on this project. And I say that because I recently moved to Troy about 3 years ago, and I came to this area because I love the large open lots. My husband and I, we looked for about 3 years, and we zeroed in on 3 areas here in Troy and Rochester Hills, and we said, these are the areas. Kept looking, waiting till the right one came up, and luckily, he's married to a realtor. I've been a realtor for 27 years, so I was able to jump on the property, and we happened to get a good deal about it. But the thing we loved about the area was the openness, and I'm hearing a comment tonight about the historical area, historical. Well, it was the openness of the area, because we moved from Berkeley, where they're building, they are using every inch of green space to put up houses. So as you consider this decision, and I hope the communication stays open, because this property is going to get built on. He's a developer. Housing is needed. We know it. I can speak to that firsthand. It is a big problem here in the United States, and it's a big problem in Troy, as we all know. Affordable housing, we don't have time for that conversation, but it's going to be built on. I would love to see this area not dense. Ranch homes, they'd fit right in, and they'd probably sell like hotcakes, because everybody's looking for a ranch. So I just wanted to give my opinion on that, because I know those would sell quickly. The thing I see with this plan, just for observation from being a realtor for 27 years, is where do they push the snow, and then big trucks coming in, the garbage trucks, the turning around, this and that. I think of this because I've shown many of condos like this in many areas, and it's horrible to try to find parking spots when you're trying to show a property, and when there's snow, there's no room there to push it. And then the residents are upset because they have nowhere to park. So that's a consideration. That was the first thing I thought about when I saw this. So, and drainage and electrical and all those other issues too, because when I first moved here to the house on Westaway, we had electrical issues. And I couldn't believe how much we lost power. So I personally called DTE, and we found out the substation on South Boulevard, they made some repairs to it because of the call I made there. We haven't lost power on Westaway in the last 2 years, so I'm happy about that. So there's a lot of issues, draining, electrical, that I've discovered living up here in the country versus down in the city. So I just hope that all this communication stays open and these considerations are kept in mind. And again, my name is Mary Rettig, and I live at 6860 Westaway. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
She was right at 3
No.
minutes. Perfect.
Yes. Does she get a prize?
Must have practiced that like 5 times to nail that.
She wasn't even going to speak tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. I'm going to set my own timer too, just to make sure that I stay on point here, because I don't have anything rehearsed. My name is Shane Coleman. I reside at 6839 Westaway. Without getting too deep in my age, I've spent my entire life here in Troy. The first 25 to 30 years of my life, I provide emergency services to the city government, police and fire. The comments I'm going to make tonight might pose more questions than anything. One of the things that I haven't heard talked about, even though it's been briefly touched on, is going to tie to the density question, is the unintended consequence of traffic flow. So spot checks on traffic flow during rush hours really don't paint the whole picture. Having watched this city develop from, and I'll use Rochester Road as an example, Rochester Road used to be a 2-lane road going up the center of the city. Now you can see that it's a boulevard, right? So part of that division came from a high rate of incident, cross traffic. So the motoring public that not only lives in the city but also traverses through the city will be impacted by the density of something like this. What I'm speaking to and rate is what I'll call like a 90-degree incident. So someone's trying to pull out onto Livernois and somebody gets hit broadside or T-boned or however we know that. So I think my comments tonight would be more speaking into maybe a question for the traffic committee. What has the traffic committee done as far as a traffic flow study and the impact? Obviously, it's not easy to expand Livernois or expand Square Lake. But speaking to the density of it and the safety of, the citizens, the children. I raised my kids here. I started my 52nd year here in the city. I think it's something that warrants a little bit deeper look on the safety of the citizens as well as the motoring public. So that's all I had. I'm going to leave you with a few questions that I was given by my partner. One question was, can the historic homes have a deed clause attached so that they can't be torn down? Not the answer, obviously. Is there a plan, and this will tie to the traffic incident ratio, is there a plan for the displaced wildlife? We have, on Westaway, we have a routine of about 8 to 12 deer that flow through our backyard. Those deer, we all know that, it's don't veer for deer. Okay, so we've heard that. So development like this is going to displace that. Not that you can manage it, but I think it's something to consider. Okay. And then outside of that, I would just leave you with this: is it's typically the unintended consequences that we don't see. All of the details have been touched on, everything from how it fits into the landscape to the size to the, the height and so on. But I think for the safety of the citizens and the motoring public, it's something that needs to be have a little bit more investigation on how this is going to impact. And I'll speak to the 3 schools that are in that intersecting area. So you have Deerfield up north, Smith, and then Martell down there. So that's what I'll leave you with. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Stephanie Heights, 6644 Montclair Drive. I wasn't planning on speaking today. I understand that the property is going to be developed on, and kudos to you for everything that you have done. I do think the concern lies within the more densely part of the PUD. I moved from Berkeley. I lived in Berkeley for 10 years, and I moved to my property because it's spacious. I'm not standing there looking in my neighbor's bathroom while I'm taking a shower. On top of that, I had 3 families that have followed me into my neighborhood. Our best man has bought a house on Hearst. My maid of honor has bought a house on whatever it is. Sorry, I'm nervous. But right down the street. That neighborhood in the last 5 years since we have been there has grown tremendously with children. One school that's been left out is Woodland Elementary, is right there also on Livernois, which also does cause congestion and havoc, drop-offs and pickups. There's a lot of traffic in the area. And unfortunately, our neighborhood has become a cut-through to the point where we have been at many road commission meetings having stop signs installed on corners that shouldn't need stop signs installed on. So I'm not against developing. It's going to come eventually, but I would just ask for less, to not have as much traffic, for those spaces to be larger, to fit into where that area is. The people are moving in the area because they want the larger lots. They don't want to be right on top of one another. My other concern would be if we set the precedence within allowing this development to go in, what happens to the development to the east that does connect into Ottawa? What type of traffic is that next development then going to add to our area? The families that are moving in the area are moving in the area for the space. They aren't moving in the area to be sitting on top of one another. So I would just consider less in that area. So thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to fill this out first, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Dan Lopez. I'm actually one of the newest neighbors here. I just moved down the street at 2200 Crooks Road, right by the mall, between 15 and 16 mile. I've loved living here in Troy. I've got a really concerning statistic, and I think this conversation today boils down to 2 points. Troy is currently declining at a rate of 0.33% annually. We had a population of 87,000 in 2020, and now in 23 it's down to 86. So the first point that I think that this boils down to is, do we as a community want more or less neighbors? Because we're losing them. The second point that I think we should really address is we keep on having this conversation about traffic flow. I think it's a very important conversation to have. But at the center of that, we're talking about cars. We're talking about how many people occupy that, how many cars occupy a road. And if, you can ask my friend, I am the biggest car hater out there. I think that the less cars we have on the road, the more traffic will improve. How can we get that to happen? I think that this kind of high-density project counterintuitively is going to help with traffic. The more that we can pack people into an area, I don't want to sound like sardines, but the more that we can add people, the more the need arises for public transit, for other systems like that to move people in a safe and secure manner. And then I'll go back to my first point. Do we want more or less neighbors? I've been welcomed very, very nicely and very kindly by my neighbors here in this area. I came from Sterling Heights, and right there, what I was in is a very large subdivision. There's a lot of just, cluttered, from an aerial's perspective, really full of houses, but I didn't know any neighbors. Right now, I know 4 out of my surrounding neighbors, which is a new record for me. So my point that I'm making is I think that this kind of development right here is going to add more people to this community. I want to see this community grow. I want to see businesses boom. I want to see schools packed. I want to see less cars on the road. I want to see more public transit. I want to see more people getting to and from their houses, their work, their pleasure areas safely. And I think this is a really positive step in that direction. And I think that the questions that we're asking really require us as a community to ask questions introspectively. What do we want from our community? And does this really uphold the standards that we want as stated in the Troy Master Plan? Thank you. Again, my name is Dan Lopez. I'm here at 2200 Crooks Road.
Thank you.
Hi,
Good evening.
my name is Linda Swanson. I have lived here since 1973. I live on Blackwall, and we all have 1 acre of property there. I think that we need I think we need single-family homes. A few months ago, there was rain 3 times in 1 week, so much so that it seeped into my home, and I spent some $1,000 to have a 2-foot deep pole installed down to my ditch there to avoid water problems in the future. And I think we need green space, and there's not hardly any there, and we need, our climate is going to bring more storms and flooding and whatnot. We don't need more roads and cement, and we're not going to have any mass transit here. The auto companies in Michigan have seen to it that that's never going to happen. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Williams. I'm at 159 Telford. I'd like to acknowledge the multiple attempts made by the developer in trying to make this sound so appealing. More needs to be done. But this does not change the fact that this location absolutely does not qualify for a rezone to a PUD. This is spelled out in the City of Troy zoning ordinance, March 23rd, 2023, and in the January 9th agenda packet. Article 11, page 256 zoning ordinance, page 22 of the agenda packet, section 1101 intent, paragraph A, points 1 through 9. Of the 9 points, I believe this fails across the board. Paragraph B, the provisions of this article are not intended to be used as a device for avoiding the zoning requirements that would otherwise apply, which it glaringly does. Also, the use of a planned unit development shall only be approved when such approval results in improvements to the public health, safety, and welfare in the area affected, which it absolutely does not. Section 1102, uses permitted. This is not aligned with the overall goals and intentions outlined in the master plan. We have a new master plan coming, and this is not part of it. Section 1103, standards for approval, paragraph B, wasn't brought up tonight. Points 1 through 18. Of the 18 points, the ones that do apply are not met for this location. Please do not approve a PUD rezone on this tiny, historical, quiet 6 acres of land. PUD should not be used for locations like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, guys. Deborah Lazecki, 40-year resident, also a real estate broker. I'm going to go really fast. I looked at the 2024 master plan of the Troy Parks and Rec, which was a pretty cool thing, had a lot of interesting stuff in it. There was a forecast from SEMGOD forecast a 56% increase in households with seniors. That is for the year of 2015 to 2045. Houses with children are expected to decrease more than 5%. I think that this ranches that we're talking about, that people have been bringing up, I think is something that we're really looking for. And I think we need to look at what we're going to be doing with our seniors. So when we want to get off a property, we want to get something, we still want to stay in the city that we love. Maps within that report also shows waterways north of Square Lake, east of Livernois. I'm concerned about the flooding that's already there between Ottawa and Square Lake. Is this going to continue to it? We've had several issues about that. Renderings showing driveways. When I look up, it appears that everyone has a driveway. I'm wondering about the 9 through 14, 17 through 15. Is there 2 spaces parking in the driveway there? I know their garages are underneath, but is there parking there too, or do they not have additional parking? There's only 25 parking spaces that are in this community for 30, well, not 35 homes, for 33. And I'm just concerned about the parking space on that also. And the other big thing is the service, the emergency drive that we have going off of Square Lake. You know the kids are going to get on that and they're going to walk and want to cross the street to go to Smith Middle School. Are we addressing a crosswalk, or are we going to put something in there that, you know, no one's allowed on this, or something in the not deed restrictions, but the condo docs, just for protection? Because I hate to see some kid run across the street and get hit. Our streets are very narrow and are safe. The historical corner really doesn't have to do with, we know these houses are not historical designated, they're just older houses within the neighborhood. We really appreciate how he's been able to keep those. My biggest question on that, are they going to be part of the association? Is there going to be deed restrictions as far as that they're going to continue to stay like they are? Will he sell those houses or keep them within the community? Well, if he keeps them within the community, he said he was going to sell them. But will they continue to be used or kept like they are? And other than that, I'm done early. That's really good. I guess our biggest concern is also the infrastructure. We've got 3 schools, really 4. I didn't even think about the one that's north on Livernois. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is John Malott. I live at 72 Telford Court, kind of right across from the entrance there. Thank you for your service, and thanks for listening to us all tonight. I think one of the things that I'd like to point out is that this development actually is being shoved into a historic area. We've all said that, but it's also surrounded on 3 sides effectively by residential. A good portion of those people are impacted by this, and some of those people are here tonight, impacted significantly. The other thing I'd like to point out is, as a parent, I mean, I would be very concerned about a child, you know, if I lived in this development, playing in this area. I mean, we got a lot of parking lot spaces, cars coming in and out of garages and so forth. And if I lived in this area, I'd also be very concerned about coming out of a garage and, you know, child being there or somebody out there walking or whatever. So that's another thing I wanted to point out. Most of the other things I wanted to say were brought up by previous speakers. But additionally, I'd like to hit on this again. The green space in this area is very limited. I think we sometimes lose the fact that these buildings are high, right? And you have a narrow green space. You come around the corner, that's basically nothing. It's 20-foot wide, 30-foot wide. You can't really do anything. Children can't play there. It's just very small. This is just too dense of a development placed into a residential area that just doesn't fit.
And then the last thing I'll bring up, and I don't mean to be facetious about this, but if the building that was going to be on Livernois was an eyesore, why aren't these other buildings eyesores? Doesn't make any sense to me. So to me, this is just too dense of an area for this location, and you should vote it down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you everyone for listening to all of us tonight. I stand here in solidarity with all my neighbors, again in opposition to this development, and I don't need to go into all those details, but I do respectfully want to ask the Planning Commission about something that was brought up at one of the meetings regarding notifying all residents in Troy of proposed developments for this development and in the future. A request was made for better signage. There was never any additional signage put up. I would like to see, when there is proposed developments in the future too, that there's additional signage so that there's a sign coming either way when you're going north and south on Livernois, that you can see that there's a proposed change plan for that site. I want to commend my neighbors for getting the word out to all of our neighbors, putting signs up, doing Facebook posts, doing online posts, doing printouts, and sending them out to get the word out for us all to stand together in opposition to this. But I just think in a city of 80,000+ people that there needs to be just better communication to other neighbors and all the residents of what exactly is happening in the city and what's proposed to happen in the city. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Lisa Williams. I live at 159 Telford, so back kind of up to it. I think my main concern is that it's a PUD. It's a PUD, it's a PUD, it's a PUD. Our section is all R1B. Everything is R1B. You're putting in a PUD where it doesn't belong, the transition. I mean, I think he's doing great things working with you, but I think it still needs a lot of work. There was a comment that it looks like a set of dominoes in a box. I still see the dominoes. I see them. It lacks green space. The community's engaging with one another. I don't see it. I see in the plans that there's still plans for a turn lane. Are there? Can that question be answered? Is the road going to be widened? That seems to be a concern. I did have a question about the EVA 2, reading that the fire department access roads require 20 feet. Is that true? Can that question be answered? I think right now it's at 12. And then the angle which a fire truck would enter, is that feasible for a fire vehicle? It's just not a PUD. I'm sorry. I wish it's close, but I'm not seeing it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Benjamin Blazak. I live at 761 Ottawa. There's a flood problem, and people have brought it up before. I'd like to give you just these forms because I'm quite sure. Do you mind if I give this to copies? That's a FEMA hazard study from 2015. And the flooding has gotten progressively worse. Let's be realistic. I mean, where I live, I have crabs coming out of the ground. There's massive amount of water. Any more concrete in that neighborhood, and there's going to be a serious problem. I don't know if that can be addressed now. The bridge on Livernois, which is part of that entire area, is continuously being worked on by the county. Continuously. I've lived here 30 years. I asked, why was my house backfilled covering the basement windows? The gentleman that was there since the late 50s told me that the water came down because of a heavy rainstorm, and basically all the houses, so anybody who knew anything put their houses close to the street. So that, and they're always out there. I mean, I don't know how the county keeps that bridge up. And then you've got they're talking about the children's and everything else. I pay a good chunk of change. Is my house worth it? In Troy, no. Okay? But even if I had a homestead at my house, me and my wife's cottage on the St. Clair River in the city of St. Clair, in the southern end, I pay more taxes without, if I had the homestead up there than I do here. My house was built in 1951, okay? The bottom line is school taxes is where all the money goes. They blame the city, and I have nothing against kids. I really don't. I have no kids. I'm happy to pay school taxes. But what is everybody going to be paying $40,000? Geez, oh Pete, my house is 1,600 square feet. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? What happens? You put more kids in, that's great, but who's going to buy the houses? Who's going to afford it? What's going to happen? This is the reality. The traffic, I'm shocked. I don't even try to turn off Ottawa Street on Livernois now. I drive through my neighborhood simply because I don't want to kill somebody. I know how to drive a car. I've raced. I'll avoid. I will be okay. But people, it's so frustrating. They go through the turn lane there all the time when I turn. Surprised there hasn't been a head-on. Okay? Then, the thing that okay. Look up the product line. That's it. I'm sorry to bother you.
Oh, that's okay. Over. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the commission? Seeing no one getting up, then we will bring it back to the commission. Make sure that gentleman's not coming forward. Okay. Back to the commission for, I guess, Mr. Savinant or Mr. Carlisle. There were a number of questions asked. Are you able to kind of cover some of those? I wrote some of them down, so.
Well, we asked Stephen Deering, our traffic expert from OHM, to attend tonight in the event that there were questions. Okay. And there's not I don't believe there's a specific question. I guess there's one about the potential for widening Livernois Road, but Steve's again, he works for OHM Advisors, and he previously, in a past life, used to work for the Oakland County Road Commission. He's a traffic expert, very knowledgeable, and perhaps he could speak to the effect that this potential development would have on traffic, what type of trip generation we could expect.
Right. Welcome, Mr. Deering.
Good afternoon or good evening. For the record, Stephen Deering, Senior Traffic Engineer with OHM Advisors. A variety of traffic-related concerns were voiced. I don't know that I'll cover all of them, but I thought I'd start at the kind of global level. Livernois is master planned in the community for a future right-of-way of 120 foot. That is the normal dimension that one would expect if you wanted to see a 5-lane road with sidewalk on both sides and an adequate green belt separating the road from the sidewalk. Obviously, that's not out there today, but that is within the master plan. This development is going to provide the 60-foot half right-of-way across their frontage, so that if and when the city wants to undertake that kind of a project, the right-of-way is provided, at least in this portion of the area. What is out there today is a generally two-lane road that has intermittent auxiliary lanes added, up to and including basically the 5-lane at the intersection of Square Lake. The center left turn lane that had been developed for that signalized intersection is kind of petering out across the southern portion of this property. The development plan is actually going to have the development extend that center left turn lane across their frontage to serve their new access to Livernois Road. So there will be road improvements done by the development to provide a southbound center left turn lane, and then they're also providing a northbound right turn lane into their development. So isolating the left turn movements for their property benefits, of course, themselves, but also the property owners on the west side who will now have a center lane if they're coming north to be able to isolate, wait until opposing traffic is through, and then be able to get into their driveways. So that's kind of the more global kind of view of the development. The development was considered small enough that the city did not ask for a formal traffic impact study. Usually those are reserved for developments of a sufficient size that it's anticipated that the impacts are going to be felt relatively far afield from the development's location itself. Different communities have different thresholds that they use to decide when they're asking for a formal impact study. But most of them, they either look at the peak hour being generated by the proposed development or a 24-hour volume. And again, every community is a little bit different, but most of them want to see impact studies if they're looking at a development that's going to generate about 100 trips an hour or maybe 750 in a day. This development is barely a third of that, so it was thought not particularly important that an impact study be done. But as a service to the city, we used a reference called trip generation, published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and that allows us to estimate what kind of trips might be generated depending on what the type of the development is. Residential, commercial, retail. If it's residential, is it single family detached? Is it townhome? Is it an apartment? You know, that sort of thing. If the developer had been asked to do a formal traffic study, they would have used the exact same reference. That is the industry standard for trying to determine what trips are generated depending on the land use being discussed. That was provided in your packet for the previous times this development was in front of you. We did not revise it for this particular occasion because, if anything, they're actually reducing their dwelling units. But just for giggles, I took a look at it, and basically you see that there's like 20 peak traffic movements in the morning. It's probably going to be 3 less because of the reductions that they're talking about. It was, I believe, was it 28 in the PM? And it's probably going to be 4 less. And I didn't even bother trying to calculate the 24-hour because, again, it's such a small number. One of the reasons we didn't look at a formal traffic study is that when we're only talking about 20 or 30 vehicles an hour in the peak, and then you start looking at the traffic flows that you see on Livernois during those same peak hours, each and every day traffic varies a little bit on Livernois. Not by much, but a little bit. The rule of thumb is maybe 5% differences between the different days. Mondays and Fridays tend to be a little bit heavier. Sometimes, depending on location. Other times, it might be it's the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that's a little bit heavier. And there's a lot of imponderables, like is there a school nearby? What are the school arrival and dismissal times, and other things like that. But if a development is only going to be generating a score of vehicles in an hour, it will probably be fitting into the traffic flow in such a way that you're not able to discern the fact that there's a few more cars given the natural variance that you would see on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's not at all unusual for that day-to-day variance to be 5% or 10%, something like that. And even 30 an hour in the evening, that's less than like 2% change given what Livernois is already seeing. So what I've heard is that there are traffic concerns on Livernois, mostly because of the fact that there are not one but two different elementary schools that front Livernois, one to the north, which I think is Woodland. I'm not sure about that, but I think it is. And there's a school to the south, Martell. To the extent that those schools are generating problems, they're generating congestion, that is removed from and independent of whether or not this property develops. I don't know what the relationship is between the city of Troy and the school districts, but there are things that can be done to improve safety and circulation around schools, but it does require the cooperation between the two government entities. And again, I don't know if the city has that kind of a relationship with the school district to try to get together and figure out what could and should be done, and then within whose budget you're going to be looking at trying to make whatever changes are needed. I think that's the highlight of the comments and concerns I've heard. And if I've missed any, please let me know and I'll see what else I can add to it.
I just need a couple clarifications on this traffic study you just talked about and one that we see in the packet. Kindly explain to me, so I understand this better. As you already know, that there are not two elementary schools on Livernois, but there's also a pre-K school up on Square Lake, on the west side of Square Lake. And on this side is the Smith Middle School. Now, when we, meaning I or anybody else who is talking about traffic, we are talking not just about Livernois. We are talking about traffic in general in that area. Whether it is a parent dropping a child to the pre-K school or to Martell, or going north towards Woodlands, or coming south towards the Smith Middle School, they're all plying on just two streets there, Livernois and Square Lake, and there's no missing because there's no other roads to take them there. And in the traffic study, I cannot agree with this traffic study, I'm sorry. I don't know how this amount or this number has been given to us. I know that there are 33 homes. I'm not looking into the existing properties, but the ones that are going to be built. Each of those homes potentially will have at least 2 cars. That's the idea, that's where all of us are right now. And that's 60 cars or 66 cars to be exact. That's not counting whether there may be additional cars in any of those single-family homes as well. Now, I'm not saying all cars will be leaving the subdivision at the same time or this development at the same time. But this traffic study here is in no way a reflection of what is already happening to what will get added, not just about this development or any development that comes in this area. I am totally not convinced about this particular traffic study that I see here.
Okay. You actually identified why your concern. Basically, you actually identified the answer to your concern. With residential, the reality is that even if there's a large potential for generating trips, they don't all occur at the peak hour. We know in an urbanized area such as Troy, sitting within Oakland County, sitting within SEMCOG, that there's a lot of people that are wanting to live here, but they will have a rather arduous commute. And so they will be leaving in a time period ahead of what we would consider localized the peak hour for this short piece of Livernois. Similarly, people will have the ability to work from home, but they might have to go out, but they're going to be waiting until after that peak hour. We're not looking at the trips generated, we're looking at when it's going to hit the road network when the road network is stressed at its to the greatest extent. And the data that's been gathered nationwide over approximately 50 years now, and as new data comes in, they look at the old data to see if it's still representative, and if so, they push it out. So we have like a running set of national studies, many from Michigan, that look at the different types of dwelling units in residential. And we can identify the fact that single-family detached has different trip generation properties compared to townhomes, compared to apartment buildings, whether they're low-rise or mid-rise or high-rise. So we are using national data, national averages, and there's more in the data that would suggest that the total number of trips could be relatively high for a single dwelling unit. But we're also looking at the data that's been stratified in such a way that we can try to identify the peak hour. Not the peak 2 hour, not the peak 90 minutes, but literally the peak 60 minutes, representing the morning commute and the evening commute. So I actually believe these numbers because when I was the city traffic engineer at Rochester Hills, I decided I wanted to know how good the national data set represented what I was seeing in Rochester Hills. So I actually took a square mile. I counted every single driveway, every single street in and out for 3 days. I summed it all up. What is the percentage arriving and departing? And I was with a couple tenths of a vehicle compared to the national data set. So in my mind, the national data set works very well. From my Rochester Hills study, I knew what the total was for the entire day, but I could also identify the peak hour, AM and PM. And again, the national data set was giving me numbers within a tenth of a vehicle. So I thought that that was a validation of the method that we're using generally in the profession. And so, yeah, it's going to generate a lot more trips, but within that peak period of the AM and PM commute times, we're talking about 20 to 30, and that's it.
I'm just going to ask you one quick question. You may not know the answer to this, but just thought I'll ask. Do you know approximately how many cars ply on Livernois Road on a given day? Just Just curious on the number.
I was focusing on the peak hour traffic, which is measured just both directions. You know, we're talking about a little over, I think it's like, it's right around 1,000 an hour, both directions. I almost never deal with 24-hour volumes. You know, I'm guessing I would not be at all surprised if it was in the 16 to 18,000 a day, but I don't know what that number is.
And do you say that this is pretty typical of the intersection that this development will be sitting close to?
Excuse me?
Pretty typical of the roads that you see around in Troy or any other neighborhood that you want to compare this to?
Well, first of all, there's a great deal of variation on different mile roads within Troy. So Livernois, this stretch of Livernois would not have a large number of comparables of other mile roads. But in terms of what this development represents, if you accept the density being proposed, I think, again, our conclusion is that we're talking about, within the context of the road network and where it's being located, this represents a nominal increase in traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Deering?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Savinant or Mr. Carlisle, let's see. One of the questions that was raised was under, I guess we're calling it Plan A, the one that was approved in 2018. The access point is going to be that access that comes off of Square Lake Road, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that one does meet city ordinances as it exists right now?
It's approvable.
Okay, all right.
Approved and approvable through engineering.
And I know several questions were raised about infrastructure, in particular about flooding. I know flooding is an issue in Troy, and can you address how any new development, whether it's this one or any others, deals with flooding and how the city makes sure how that's dealt with?
If this project that you see before you this evening receives a PUD approval from City Council, the next step would be putting together and submitting a final engineering plan that addresses infrastructure, including stormwater drainage. Notice the detention pond to the south. The rainwater generated by rain events would be temporarily stored in that detention basin. The development is required. The developer is required by law to design this and construct this in such a way that it does not negatively impact the neighbors. If there are existing conditions on site that exacerbate flooding, it's an opportunity to clear that up and to actually improve flooding in the neighborhood, theoretically.
Okay, thank you. Were there any? Yes, Ms. Malahali.
Two things that came to my attention that I hadn't thought about from when the residents expressed their concern. One is the angle for the EVA access. Is that something that is compliant or will be compliant?
It will be compliant, yes.
Okay.
It's got to be able to accommodate the width of the largest fire truck. It's got to be able to accommodate the turning radius of the largest fire truck, and it's got to be able to accommodate the weight of the heaviest fire truck.
That too, correct.
But it's also designed to look like a pedestrian pathway. The likelihood of this ever being used in an emergency is very low. There's a city in British Columbia, Canada, that's got hundreds of EVAs, and most of them have never. They're the leader in North America for EVAs. Most have never been used as an EVA.
That segues into my next thing, which is right across from there and crossing Square Lake is the access to Donaldson to get students to the Smith Middle School. Now we know that more than likely middle schoolers will like to bike to school or walk to school. Is there any provision that is going to be provided by the developer or the city? I don't know how this is going to work, but where you have a crosswalk where the students can press the button so that the traffic on both sides of the Square Lake stops for these students during school hours to cross Square Lake to get to Donaldson and then walk on to. Of course, once they cross the street onto Square Lake, they are in the subdivision, there are sidewalks there, they can safely walk to Smith Middle School or ride their bike or skateboard, or whatever they are doing nowadays. But is that something that we can look into so that we can provide some kind of walkability access, being so close to the schools and potentially seeing students, kids, riding their bikes or walking or skateboarding to their schools? Is that something that we can do? Because I know it has been done in the cities that I've lived in the past, but is that something that can be done?
Are you talking about at the location where the EVA intersects with Livernois Road?
Yeah.
Is it something the city could look at? It is. There's got to be warrants for that type of design. I know that there was discussion for a similar type crosswalk recently at the city council level, I believe, for Long Lake Road, and there was discussion about that. Again, it's got to be warranted and it's got to be paid for.
I understand. So it does sit pretty close to the intersection too. We have to keep that in mind. But will that EVA access be used by the kids to go to school? I can potentially see that happening. 6th graders, 8th graders, yeah.
It could be, but there's also an intersection with a button where you can push the button across at the intersection. I know human nature being what it is, but I mean, could the city look at something like that in the future? Yes, they could.
And this would be a great place to do that as a start. I assure you that is how it is going to be happening pretty soon, because as I said again, I live so close to Smith Middle School. There's a lot of foot traffic. Kids are walking, kids are riding their bikes, kids are skateboarding. I can see them everywhere doing that in the morning, especially during the spring to fall months. So I would very much like for this idea to be approached further so that we can provide some kind of a safe passage for our kids and to potentially give that walkability that we are also looking for and allow the subdivision to then allow this development to at least have that sense of safeness and security for the families that will intend to move in, whether it is this or something else that comes up here. And my third point that, again, one of the residents did bring about is the 3 historic homes, quote unquote, I'm going to put historic in quotes because I know there is some discussion on that. But let's just say that as the developer is proposing that he's going to spruce it up and then also put it up on the market and it's going to be sold, can there be a caveat within the PUD agreement that these homes will not be destroyed in the future, in the sense somebody who owns that home and then goes on to then sell that property and something else comes up in the future? Can there be a provision made, because PUD is a negotiable thing between us and the developer, can that something be provided within the provisions of agreeing, if we were to agree on this?
Absolutely. So we don't start crafting the what's called a PUD agreement, which is the legal arm of the PUD development. We don't start crafting that until it gets at least an approval, a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission. At that point, we kind of start getting into the details. But if the intent is to maintain and improve the older homes, the 3 older homes. What we don't want is a bait and switch where the developer gets approval and sells them, and like as you indicated, the new owner demolishes it and tries to build new. We can certainly put protection in there, mandating that the home be maintained and improved appropriately. We can also put a provision in there that if it is destroyed or if it is demolished, it's got to be rebuilt to certain standards. Perhaps, I'm just making this up now because I haven't had a chance to talk to Julie yet, but perhaps it's got to be of a design that's approved by the Historic District Commission or something like that. We can certainly add standards in there. The intent is that the homes maintain this character that we're talking about of this intersection.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Fox.
So I know there was a resident who was concerned about the pickleball court. I believe we ended up talking about it last meeting, but that has been converted into a general sports court, correct? Or that is no longer designated specifically for pickleball, correct? Or
Mr. Fox, your point, the plan says, say, sport court.
Yeah.
Looking at the details, it looks like it's a pickleball / tennis court. I don't think the details have been worked out, but the plans just call it a generalized sport court.
Sure. So it's not specifically reserved for / guaranteed to be pickleball.
Doesn't appear so.
Answers my question. There was another resident who was asking about a right-hand turn lane, like a deceleration lane into the complex. I believe I see it on the map there on the northern part, but there is a deceleration lane turning into the property, right?
This is
Mr. Deering said, I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
This right here is a deceleration lane that will be built and constructed to engineering standards if this project is approved.
Okay, perfect. And then the last one I caught on my notes was a question about snow piling. Presumably the turnaround lanes was my thought, but I want to make sure. I wanted to ask the question of, is that a plan the developers are required to provide to the city? And if so, have they indicated where they plan to pile?
There's not a city requirement in terms of the ordinance about requiring certain areas to be designated for snow. But typically what we see is what you mentioned is we typically see them packed in areas where, at the end of these T turnarounds is where they're typically packed up, and if they become an issue and a problem where it either limits access, parking, or other means, the developer then would be required to go in and truck out the snow if it becomes an issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I get to Mr. Abathera? Any more questions from the commission for Mr. Savin or Mr. Carlisle based upon citizen questions?
One that just came to mind, is there a critter relocation plan or requirement to relocate animals? No. There wasn't when your house was built or any of the neighbors' houses were built, and there's none for this one either, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Abathera, did you want to answer some questions or final wrap up here?
Just to answer a couple quick questions. Flooding. There in front of Square Lake from Livernois down to here, 20 years ago they put the King Drain in, 12-foot diameter pipe that runs down in there. That's what our detention basin will drain into. That was to alleviate all the flooding up in this area, part of Livernois here. Ms. Malapala, very good question about the crosswalk right here. There's a missing sidewalk from here to there. And the city's been trying to do it for 3 years. They have stakes up there. They go away, the spring, they come back. They want to connect the sidewalk from here, and then from here to in front of John's. They want to get rid of this 100-foot wide gravel approach and put a regular approach in there and connect the sidewalk. The best place for your crosswalk would be right in front of the middle school, Donaldson, I think it is.
Donaldson.
Right there, because if you put the crosswalk right here, these kids over here aren't going to walk this way, crosswalk and back across. You put it right in front of the school so the people from Livernois can go to it and the people from Rochester Road can come back to it and then cross into the middle school. So if it's going to be a crosswalk, you'd want it in the middle of the mile road, not 1,000 feet from the intersection right here.
Thank you for correcting me on that. I did forget that there was no sidewalk in that little stretch.
Yeah,
After that, there is sidewalk, yes.
But there is plans, and when I talked to the gentleman, he says they can't find a contractor to do it. With the way things are, they have the money for it, and they can't get it, so every year, it goes again, again, and again. But you will see stakes out there. They staked it and did everything for it. And just those are the only things. The other thing is, this is not a pickleball court anymore. It's called a sports court. We addressed that the very first time that we brought it up, because the family that lives right here did not want a pickleball court, and I accommodated them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bring it back to the commission for further discussion and a resolution, possibly. Mr. Fox.
Well, one of the first things that I want to address real quick is based off of a couple of public comments, effectively to the gist of if people end up renting these properties, that's viewed as some kind of worst case or bad scenario. I want to clarify that even if all 35 of these properties are rented instead of bought, that is a perfectly fine use for this land. Renters are just as welcome in the city of Troy as people who buy. So Mr. Abathera's lease-to-own model, it will result in some renters, it will result in some homeowners. Either way, that's fantastic. You know, both are welcome. So I just want to clarify that. Second off, in regards to discussion that was previously had regarding the green spaces, I would recommend to my fellow planning commissioners to take some time during the summer to drive through Somerset Park Apartments. I lived there the first 4 of 6 years that I lived here in Troy. And the way that the green space is used by hundreds of kids in that complex, small green spaces, large green spaces, every combination, I'm very confident that that courtyard, the green spaces to the left, and the green space on this property, if constructed as designed, would be well utilized by residents of the property, whether they be children or adults. So that's just my 2 cents based on what we've discussed.
Anyone wishes to forward a resolution?
I'll do it.
Yes, okay.
Planned Unit Development File Number PUD 020 JPLN 2023-0021, Concept Development Plans CDP and Preliminary Development Plan PD approval. Village of Hastings PUD, east side of Livernois, north of Square Lake, PIN 88-20-03-301-088, comma, dash 023-024-025, and 88-20-03-351-004, Section 3, presently zoned NN Neighborhood Node Q and R1B, one family residential zone districts. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas the applicant, GFA Development Incorporated, seeks conceptual development plan and preliminary development plan approval for the Village of Hastings planned unit development located on the east side of Livernois, north of Square Lake in Section 3, approximately 6.05 acres in area, and whereas the Village of Troy PUD features 3 detached single-family homes, 8 ranch-style single-family homes, 18 two-story attached homes, and 6 single-family duplex homes for a total of 35 residential units, and whereas the PUD provides a walkable urban environment that is compact and designed to human scale, and whereas the PUD provides a compatible mix of open space, landscaped areas, and pedestrian amenities, and whereas the PUD proposes appropriate land use transitions between the PUD and surrounding properties, and whereas the PUD will reasonably mitigate impacts to the transportation system and enhance non-motorized facilities and amenities, whereas the PUD provides a complementary variety of housing types, and be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommends the City Council that concept development plan approval and preliminary development plan approval for the proposed Village of Hastings be granted subject to the following design considerations. We're going to remove, because it's on the drawings, remove the fence between the existing, in quotes, historic homes and the adjacent new housing units, confirm trash pickup and provide trash vehicle circulation plan, and provide a photometric plan. Were there any other things we have to add? Okay.
Second.
All right. Before I recognize a second.
I thought Ms. Malali wanted something in the PUD agreement regarding
the historic homes. I'll add that. That the 3, in quotes, historic homes, there'll be a provision in the PUD to have them remain as historic homes in perpetuity, I guess you want to call it. whatever the legal language is needed to preserve those homes.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Mr. Savita and Ms. Dufresne, that have everything you need in the resolution?
no one wants to hear me speak right now. I have to say this. We really raised the bar when this board approved the PUD at Long Lake and Crooks. We established, I think this board established a sufficient number of criteria under section 11.03 of the PUD. What Mr. Krent just read, I count maybe 4 out of the 18 standards being met. So I think that you really need to think about, is this resolution that's on the table, is that meeting a sufficient number of standards under our zoning ordinance? I'm not saying it can't or it won't, but if we only approve something that has 4 or maybe 5 standards, we've really lowered the bar from where we were when this board approved Long Lake and Crooks.
Okay.
So is your resolution sufficient from a legal standpoint? Sure, but from, moving that forward to city council, I know these questions will come up there. So I really need this board to make a record with respect to what standards and if it's a sufficient number that's being met under our ordinance.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
has there been a second to that?
I believe Mr. Fox seconded it, so.
I'd like some discussion.
Sure, oh, absolutely.
Our city attorney has just hit the nail on the head. I was usurped by her comments because she is 100% correct. There are 18 PUD standards in our ordinance, and I think she's being generous when she says maybe the developer met 4 of them. I think that we can't vote approval, at least on the record I see, that's been developed in these meetings. PUD's in the wrong spot anyway.
Mr. Fox.
I think it should be noted for clarification that the resolution that Mr. Krent read was a recommended resolution provided by city staff and not necessarily an all-encompassing explanation of all of the reasons that at least I support this development. Taking a glance at the standards set forth in section 11.01, for example, encourage developments that will result in a long-term.
Standards are on 1103. I want to make sure we're using the right standards.
Yes.
1103. I know that's provided in the planning consultant report. Which page of the agenda packet is that one on?
Page 15.
15. I rolled right past it.
I could read those into the resolution if you'd like.
I submit that that's not going to meet the test.
You can read them in, but obviously
That's
not
right.
everyone would agree with you.
There's
so.
got to be a factual basis
For each of
before
those.
this motion should go forward.
Sure.
And I'm not sure it's been developed.
Well, that's where the vote comes.
For clarification, on which page of the PDF has the 18 listed? Sorry, I went to 15.
It starts at 15. Yeah,
Page 15?
it's on page 15, but it's 33 of the packet. 31 of the
31,
packet.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Just
Mr.
Just a
Faison.
clarifying question. So, Mr. Frank, does it have to meet all 18, the preponderance of the 18, or are you saying we need to determine how many of the 18 is sufficient?
Well, that's the issue with the ordinance, I concede, is it says sufficient number. So what I'm saying, so sufficient number, and not all of the standards are going to apply to this development. And that it even says that, as reasonably applicable to the site. The question is 4 or 5 standards, and maybe there are more, but the resolution that Mr. Krent read didn't have any more than 4, maybe 5. So is 4 or 5 sufficient? That's a question for you to decide as a board, but just keep in mind the precedent that sets. Going forward, the next time a PUD comes up, is 3 going to be sufficient?
Right, understood.
So what I suggest is we go through the 18 and see what ones are applicable.
Sure.
fine.
Yeah, that's a very methodical way of doing it. I would support it.
All right, Mr. Fox.
So I would say standard 1, mixture of land uses that would otherwise not be permitted without the use of the PUD, provided that other objectives in this article are also met. I think the mixed housing variety, offering different options for housing that otherwise would not be able to be built if the PUD was not granted, satisfies that criteria. I don't necessarily want to hog the conversation and give my reason for all 18, but at least with number 2, I will say a public improvement or a public facility, e.g. recreational transportation, safety, and security, which will enhance, add, or replace those provided by public entities, therefore furthering the public health, safety, and welfare. I think the public gathering spaces, the sports courts, the pollinator garden all meet those requirements of Section 2. Is it fine if I just keep going? I want to give the other planning commissioners. Okay. For number 3, a recognizable and material benefit to the ultimate users of the project and the community, which such benefit would otherwise be infeasible or unlikely to be achieved absent these regulations. By creating housing variability, you're opening up the amount of people who are able to afford moving into a specific complex. Houses of different sizes are going to be different costs, and thus different people are going to benefit along a wider range. So I would argue it meets the 3rd criteria. Long-term protection and preservation of natural resources, natural features, historic and cultural resources, significant quantity and or quality in the need of protection or preservation, and which would otherwise be unfeasible or unlikely to be achieved absent of these regulations. Without a PUD, there's no way the city can guarantee those historic homes will be preserved. So I would argue it meets that requirement right there. Compatible. Yeah, they're on.
They don't have it though.
Yeah, they don't have a packet. I think Mr. Savadant's
Gonna do that
working
right
his
now.
magic.
Yep.
Drum roll.
It's a map.
No worries. Very well organized drive.
(1103) standards for approval.
Perfect. So it's section B, and then I've gone through 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I believe I was on number 5.
Correct.
Number 5, a compatible mixture of open space, landscaped areas, and/or pedestrian amenities. That's ultimately going to be subjective. In my opinion, it meets that requirement, but obviously that's open for discussion among the commissioners. Appropriate land use transitions between the PUD and surrounding properties. It's surrounded on 3 sides by residential. It is a residential build. The commercial build to the south will benefit from the increase in customers, so I believe it meets that standard. Design features and techniques such as green building and low impact design, which will promote and encourage energy consumption and sustainable development. While I wish the development did more, as you guys know, green building is a personal focus of mine. I will say that since I got here, this is the only developer to volunteer solar-powered street lighting. And again, different little green tweaks like that. I think that one's debatable whether or not it's met that for sure. But at least that, let's see. Number 10, the PUD will reasonably mitigate impact to the transportation system and enhance non-motorized facilities and amenities. I think the increase in sidewalks increases the ability for people to walk to the, did I skip one?
Skip number 8.
Did I skip number 8? Okay. Innovative and creative site and building design solutions and materials. I think in the context of the city of Troy, and particularly that area of the city of Troy, we don't see a lot of builds that fit this description. Is it a brand new idea? No. Is it new to the area and would increase the diversity of the housing stock in the area? Sure. Again, that's debatable among the commissioners. So then, I'm on number 10.
No, 9.
Oh, number 9. Desirable qualities of a dynamic urban environment that is compact, designed to human scale, and exhibits contextual integrations of building and city spaces. I don't think anyone would disagree that this build is compact. That is the purpose of these types of designs. So I think that utilizes the space well and provides appropriate space for those who would live there. The PUD will reasonably mitigate impacts to the transportation system and enhance non-motorized facilities and amenities. Again, adding a significant amount of sidewalks, making the area walkable, connecting the community to the commercial properties via sidewalks. That increases non-motorized transportation. For the appropriate assembly use, redevelopment, replacement, and/or improvement of existing sites that are occupied by obsolete uses and/or structures. I don't think that one applies because I don't know if there's any obsolete structures that are on the property. So bump 11. Number 12, a complementary variety of housing types that is in harmony with adjacent uses. This has the most housing types of any PUD that has come front since I joined the commission. A reduction of the impact of a non-conformity or removal of an obsolete, well, again, obsolete building doesn't apply here. I don't believe there's one existing on the property. These are just getting longer. A development consistent with and meeting the intent of this article, which will promote the intent of the master plan or the intent of any applicable corridor or sub-area plans. If adopted, the uses shall be, if conditions have changed since the plan or any applicable corridor or sub-area plans were adopted, the uses shall be consistent with recent development trends in the area. That one I would need to think on for a second. The master plan does focus on neighborhood nodes as points of increased density, and there is part of this PUD that does intersect with the neighborhood nodes. So I do think there is an argument that it does achieve that goal for the neighborhood node. However, again, that's debatable. Includes all necessary information and specifications with respect to structures, heights, setbacks, density, parking, circulation, landscaping, amenities, and other designs and layout features, exhibiting a due regard for the relationship of the development to the surrounding properties and uses thereon, as well as the relationship between the various elements within the proposed PUD. In determining whether these relationships have been appropriately addressed, consideration shall be given to the following. A, the bulk, placement, and materials of construction of the proposed structures, the location and screening of vehicular circulation and parking areas in relation to surrounding properties and the other developments, the location and screening of outdoor storage, loading areas, outdoor activity or work areas, the hours of operation of the proposed uses, which it's residential, that doesn't apply, the location, amount, type, and intensity of landscaping and other site amenities. Cool. So, of all of the complaints that surround the property, I don't believe we've seen complaints in terms of screening. I mean, trees surround the whole thing. Everything is going to be set back from the major roadways. I believe that it meets the applicant points of those 5 little sub points. Again, obviously debatable. Parking shall be provided in order to properly serve the total range of uses within the PUD. The sharing of parking among the various uses within a PUD may be permitted. The applicant shall provide justification to the satisfaction of the city that the shared parking proposed is sufficient for the development and will not impair the functioning of the development and will not have a negative effect on traffic flow within the development and or on properties adjacent to the development. I believe it's consistent with all of our zoning in terms of parking. I haven't heard that brought up as a point or an issue with the property. So I believe parking is set. Innovative methods of stormwater management that enhance water quality shall be considered in the design of the stormwater system. They have a retention basin to the south, and I believe in a previous conversation I had with Mr. Abatheria, he mentioned bioswales or something to that extent, but that is just me going off of my memory from before the holidays, so. The proposed PUD shall be in compliance with all applicable federal, state, and local laws and ordinances and shall coordinate with existing public facilities. I do not believe this violates any federal or state laws, or else we would have discussed it already. So.
Okay. And I wanted all that included in my resolution, and you can second if you may.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the proposed, thank you, Mr. Fox, for reading all that. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Beekner.
Mr. Frame? Do you have any thoughts after that?
So now is the resolution suggesting that it meets all 18?
No.
Other than the ones that don't apply, so specifically anything referencing an obsolete structure, which I believe was numbers 11 and numbers 13. So 11 and 13, there's not an obsolete structure, thus that does not apply. There is also a point about hours of operation under item 15. That does not apply because this is not a commercial development, it is a residential. Otherwise, I am of the personal belief that there are arguments for the other points, unless Mr. Krent can think of one that I've mentioned that I'm forgetting.
No, not.
Okay.
So Julie, do you think better than you thought before?
As I said, I don't have a vote, and I don't know whether or not this board thinks that it meets I guess now we're up to 15 out of the 18. That's for you all to decide. But 15, yeah, 15 is much more sufficient than 4 or 5, if this board agrees that it meets those 15.
I was asking for your opinion. Does it meet 15?
That's not for me to give.
Okay.
Not an attorney. Not debating this.
I'm not asking you.
Well, I'm going to chime in if that's okay, Mr. Chair. The standard is that it meet a sufficient number of the following objectives. The Planning Commission members, when they vote, feel that it does, they vote yes. If the Planning Commission member feels that they do not, they vote no. So the sufficient number of standards is subjective based on the individual opinion of each of the Planning Commission members. Is that correct?
Correct. Thank you. Any further discussion? Now, Mr. Abather, I think it's back to the commission now. So any further discussion? Ms. Malahala.
Thank you, Mr. Fox, for going through that in so much detail. However, as Mr. Savirat just pointed out, I would reserve my judgment on some of the standards here, standards 2, 6, 8, and 14. According to me, this particular development does not meet it. So, yes, for me, it is a very difficult decision. There are some good points from this development that I see, and also it does fit into the standards that we have, but there are some that are yet to be met, and I definitely see that there's room for improvement on that. So it's going to be a tough vote on my end on this one. I'll wait to hear what other commissioners have to say regarding the standards. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, I'll just go through my list really briefly. I don't think it meets 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, and 15A.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Beekner.
We're all Troy residents. You guys are all Troy residents. We take this seriously. We're volunteering our time. The thing I go back to is what was my first question was he has the ability to do the 3 stories. And I think most everybody in the room doesn't want that to happen, and I think including him. So definitely a tough decision, but that's one of the big, you gotta be careful what you wish for in one person's opinion.
Mr. Faison.
I'll echo Mr. Beekner's point. I look at it and I think 6 and 12 are very questionable, whether this project meets it, but Plan A, it's much better than Plan A.
Yes, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, I think what's important to reiterate is the purpose of a PUD in terms of why a planning office would encourage a developer to pursue it. You know, when it comes to a development, the city, as long as a developer meets the ordinances set forth by the city, the developer can effectively do whatever they want. They can bulldoze everything on the property. They can essentially do anything. That is the nature of the system we live in. A PUD is one of the only direct ways that a city can actually intervene with a development and add in requirements such as the protection of homes, such as the preservation of green space, the addition of amenities, and thus, really, it's one of the best ways for the city to actually have an impact on what's going to get built, as opposed to just kind of throwing it to the wind and saying, developer, just meet the ordinances. So I would advise caution to planning commissioners who are maybe considering voting no on this because it's not perfect, just on the basis of we're getting a lot. There's a lot that's being conceded by the developer here, and there's a chance that we could lose everything that's been conceded. So that's my 2 cents.
Any further discussion?
There is one more point that I'd like to add.
Go ahead.
We've all observed that the developer did step up to the concerns of the residents and us. I know the alternative even though Mr. Abatira is not looking at building it, is still not something that we are all in agreement and we like. My vote will be a yes if there is a question regarding density. If there is some kind of an indication from the developer that there will be consideration to lower the density on the south side of the property, I can see that there are many positives in this, so I don't want to hold up this whole thing just for that reason alone. But density, if that can be addressed, I think we will have a winning development here, because I am overtly concerned about the density directly in correlation to traffic. So there are positives, but I think we can do better.
Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Barakis.
Yeah, I'd just like to conclude, because I've already stated at length how I feel about this project. I'm a little bit disappointed, I guess, because I feel that the developer came in today with very willing to work with us to make this a better project. And what I'm hearing from some of my fellow commissioners is that this is good enough and that he's conceded enough. And to your point, a PUD is a negotiation, and this is our opportunity to get things for the city. And when I go through the list, you know, Mr. Faison brought up another one, and when I glanced, I had missed that as well. So my list just got longer of how it does not meet the standards. And so I will not be voting for it tonight.
Mr. Tagle.
You know, I tend to agree with Mr. Fox in the comments he's made. And the concern I have, when we start talking about density, make a case for what the density should be. You can't just say it's too dense, reduce the density. To what? By 1 unit? By 3 units? Because what you're saying is the density is related to the traffic. I understand the connection. But we had a traffic expert stand up here and tell us that based on what's on the drawing right now, will not have a significant impact during the peak travel hours. So how do you make a case to say what the density should be if the question of density is related to traffic only? I just don't understand. I just don't see how we can tell somebody reduce it to what. So that's my concern with going down that path. There's no solid case to be made, in my opinion.
Go ahead.
I agree. I mean, I do not know whether we can propose a number, because that is something that I don't think I would be comfortable suggesting to the developer a number. But I would like to tell, I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I still feel much of this project is positive.
Right.
Much of this project is positive. I'm not denying that. The one hiccup that I continue to have is I think we will have a winning formula if we come up with a way to not pack on the southern end. And I know you're smiling at me, but I will tell you that that intersection, Mr. Tagle, those roadways are ones that are my lifeline. Whether I'm coming here, I'm going to the library, I'm going to my work, I'm going to my Indian stores to shop. It is a mess in the morning and the evening times. How else can we look at, we want development in the city of Troy, we want these kind of homes, we want middle housing, we know we are missing those things. But we also don't want to make it such an inconvenience. And we want to come up with, if not a near perfect solution, at least closer to that. And I see density is one I strongly feel in this case, and probably because I'm so close to this project from the proximity, geographical proximity, I still feel, and I really want to encourage you to look into that. My vote will be a yes, if that is something that will be considered, because I know we cannot meet all 18 standards. I'm not idealistic here. Not all projects no project comes close to that. But he does meet a lot of them, if not all of them. And I want to be reasonable here. So, thank you. I appreciate your insight into that.
Well, and again, I don't, the question for me is, if we don't tell them what the density should be, we're still going to vote on it.
Can I put a number then? Can I
Well, you
pose a
can do
number?
whatever you want, but I don't think that's our role
That
based
is-
on the factual
yes.
information that we've been presented with here tonight. I understand you folks and you folks that live in this intersection, there are peak times where, just like every intersection, whether it's Troy or it's Rochester, wherever, there are peak times when the traffic is going to back up, where there could be safety concerns because people don't obey the laws. But how can this developer, if we're, again, we go back to the density, we're going to vote on this. And if the density isn't where we think it should be, we're going to vote no. So we're getting back to that question of asking, what is that number? What is that density? And I just don't see how we can get there. I can't get there.
I understand. Recently, on a traffic study that was done and that was reported out on NPR that I was listening to, in America alone, 73 to 74% rise in pedestrian deaths. Pedestrian deaths, not accidents, not injury, deaths. Whereas in many countries, Western developed countries, in Europe, the pedestrian deaths have come down or reduced to absolute zero. Now, this is a place, if you have driven on Square Lake and if you're going west on Square Lake, you want to make a turn to the south on Livernois, you can only stack 4 cars at that intersection on Square Lake. Only 4 cars. Beyond that, there is no space for people who want to make a left onto Livernois. And add into that a school bus in the morning hours. So there's 1 school bus and there is probably at best 1, maybe 2 compact cars. I am not opposed to the development. Please don't take me in that direction. All I wanted you to know is, living so close to that intersection and driving through that, what I see, not only during the peak hour, but also on other occasions. Now, I'll give you one more example. I don't want to stretch this too much. Smith Middle School's evening events happen, whether it is the PTO meeting time, whether it is parental gathering times, whether it's sports meet times, or anything that happens. I did not know this until I started living in the subdivision for about 2 to 3 years. Even during those evening times, when the cars are all coming out because the event has come to an end, I realized I am waiting there for a few more minutes than usual. Now, granted, that doesn't happen every week or every so often, but it does happen. And then added to that is the Catholic Church that sits right across Square Lake. Do we have enough congestion right now? Yes, we do. Considering the fact that the left turn lane can only stack 4 to 5 cars max. After that, there is no room to stack the cars. Please drive those roads and everyone will see what I'm talking about. The same holds true with Livernois. They did come up with a turn for Martel, okay? I thought that will improve a lot, so I was very hopeful. Well, it has, but not to the extent that we want to see. But there are other things to be considered. That's the only reason why I am pressing on the developer to seriously look into density, to at least bring down the cars by 10. Let's not add more mess, but at least if we are adding, let's not become so much more focused on just development as opposed to a good lifestyle and living environment that we want to create there.
Ms. Parakis?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the density issue because not to minimize the traffic implications, but I was really going at it from an architectural standpoint. No one really responded to my comment about the front doors that go to nowhere. We've seen them on Livernois and Long Lake where people have front doors and they open up and walk 5 steps and there is a brick wall, and on the other side of that brick wall is a parking lot. The homes on the east side have the same situation where they have front doors that lead to nowhere, maybe a row of trees or whatever is going to be put there. To me, the density has to do with the fact that I don't believe we can adequately place the homes on the lot that's given. If you reduce the density, you can turn the orientation of the buildings so they make sense. And I understand now that I guess we just disagree on that point. Mr. Fox suggested that he thinks kids play in that strip of patchy grassland. I've never seen it. I don't believe it, I don't buy it. And I don't want to approve something that I don't buy or would not want to live there myself.
Mr. Hudson?
We've got a big, powerful problem with the resolution. We've got a resolution that says we've met, I think Mr. Fox said all but 2 of them. Then we've had some other fellow commissioners say, well, I don't know about those, but I got something. I want a traffic one. I want a density one in there. So now we've got 9 members of this commission who are going to vote probably yes or no on the resolution, which is impossible to decipher. This goes to city council, and they're going to say, what the hell did they agree on? Nobody will know. We won't either.
Hey, Mr. Fox.
Well, I guess this kind of gets to Mr. Savidan's point regarding the subjective nature of the points, and that each commissioner has to decide if and how many this specific PUD meets. And if we went through in every resolution and listed every single, and I'm the one who listed every single one, originally that wasn't the case. We were going off of a recommended motion that was provided in the packet by city staff. And I think the pivot was kind of based on feedback from legal counsel. Just, again, I understand the confusing nature of the resolution. I understand why we normally don't list every single standard in these types of resolutions. But the implication was that that was something that was necessary for this type of decision, considering the controversial nature of it. So,
Mr. Beekner.
People in the crowd don't know Mr. Lambert usually speaks last, and I'm hoping he speaks now. He's a wise man. I'm curious what he has to say.
I'm just waiting for everyone to get their input in there.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, just to address Mr. Hudson's issue, it does say accomplish a sufficient number. So it's up to each person to decide, did it meet a sufficient number of the 18? So that's their yes or no.
And then they're going to say, which standards?
Well, that's up to them.
We're going to take a poll on each one and be here till 2 o'clock in the morning.
No, we're not going to do that. It's just each person deciding for themselves, does it meet a sufficient number or not? And you vote accordingly.
I disagree with your reasoning, but I don't care. Let's take a vote.
Yep.
Mr. Lambert. Has everyone said what they need to say?
Go ahead, Dave.
First, Mr. Applethier, I appreciate your willingness to work with us and with some of your neighbors to the north, east, west, and south to try to accommodate their concerns. My concern is that our assistant city attorney usually does not give us input on an issue, but she raised red flags with me that not enough of the conditions have been met for us to propose this go on to the city council. So based upon her warnings and also concerns about how the neighbors are not in love with the idea of this proposal, I'll be voting no on the resolution. So with that, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Hudson?
No.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
No.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
No.
Ms. Parakis?
No.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Beekner?
No.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
yes.
You have 4 noes and 5 yeses. I'm sorry.
The other way around.
Reverse, yes, I'm so sorry. Yes.
So it fails.
4 yeses and 5 noes.
So, Mr. Savidan, based upon this, does this go on to city council based upon essentially no recommendation? Is that how this works? Or Ms. Dufresne?
Do we have to do a motion to?
Or do we need a motion to?
It's a motion. So it's the motion, the recommendation of approval failed.
Okay.
So we'll go forward to the city council with a 4 to 5 recommendation for approval.
Okay. Right. So we'll go on to city council.
4 to 5 The recommendation for approval was 4 to 5, failed. 4 yeses and 5 nos.
So it will go on to city council with the fact that we did not recommend approval.
That's correct.
All right. And unless, Mr. Beekner.
Can we give the developer an extension since he's had a couple extensions? Who makes that decision?
The zoning administrator. So we can, yes. He hasn't asked for one, so I can't answer your question.
He's getting to the
Can the zoning administrator grant an extension? Yes. Has he sought one yet? No. But can we? Yes.
That would be yes one.
Okay. With that, then, we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, this is my last meeting as chair. It's an appropriate meeting that my term comes to an end with a very controversial issue. So the election of officers tonight, I would move the election of Ms. Parakis as chair of the Planning Commission. Is there a second? Mr. Hudson seconds it. Any further nominations in front of the commission? Yes, Mr. Krent.
I was just going to say our vice chair, that's a separate vote.
We can either do an election jointly for both positions or do one at a time, whatever the commission would prefer to do.
You can do one at a time, it's fine.
All right, well, let's do chair first.
Sure.
Any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call to elect Ms. Parakis as chair.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Beekner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations. All right, is there a nomination for vice chair? Any suggestions?
Dave, you're not leaving, are you?
Well, I'm still on the commission, so I get.
Does it switch over at a certain time, or what?
Next meeting, the new officers take.
Is there a
charge.
time when that happens, or obviously now is the time, but is it every couple of years? Or what?
Yes, it's every year is the election, and generally, we usually re-elect the chair for a second term, depending on whether we like that person or not. So, Mr. Tagle.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Malala Holly.
I'll second that.
All right, Ms. Malala Holly has been moved and seconded or nominated for vice chair. Would you accept the nomination?
That's a nice compliment.
Sorry, your time's up. You've accepted it. So, any other nominations?
Seconded.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, we'll do the roll call for electing Ms. Malala Holly as vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I missed who supported it.
Let's see.
I did.
Okay, Mr.
Krent, thank you.
Krent did.
Okay. Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Beekner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations. We have a chair and a
Put that on
vice
your
chair.
resume.
Now, do we also need to nominate our candidate for ZBA alternate? So, Mr. Fox, you're currently serving. Do you wish to continue on?
If somebody else is interested in getting a chance, we've seen a lot of interesting cases.
Is anyone else interested in being ZBA alternate? Sorry, Mr. Carlisle, you're not eligible. So I thought
I was nominating Mr. Tagle. That was.
Oh, yeah, right. Nice guy.
I'd nominate Mr. Fox.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Krent seconds it. Any further nominations for ZBA alternate? Seeing none, ready for the roll call.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Beekner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
And Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations, Mr. Fox, on being reelected. All right, next for public comment for items on the agenda. Does anyone wish to address the Planning Commission for items on the agenda? Welcome back.
Thank you. I just want to go home, and I'm sure you all do too at this point. But I guess I do have a question maybe. What would be the purpose of another extension for the 3-story condos? Given that this one is going forward to the City Council with a recommendation of no, it doesn't sound like the developer will be doing any further development of his plan and reducing the density. So I'd be concerned on that. And second, I'm a little troubled at that process. It sounds like he had some very extenuating circumstances, and I understand your judgments completely with him being in the hospital and COVID. But the city has also had some significant changes since the original approval. So I'm wondering if there's a process in place to say when someone goes for multiple extensions, is there a process or a control somewhere in our process to say, oh, there's been significant changes, that development is no longer legal the way it stands, and therefore they could not just keep it extending until something better comes along. So I'm a little concerned on that, and just kind of the general way he's still willing to build those 3 stories, even though knowing it's illegal where it's currently at, is a little troublesome. So I just wanted to raise that to the commission, maybe something to consider. I don't think it's technically under your purview, but maybe something to consider.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I think we're close. I know it's got shot down, but I still think we're close. We still want to, as a community, want to work with Gary to figure out, is there something we can do that we're good with, that he could put together, because we know it's going to get developed. We know it's going to get built. We want that built. I live right there. He's going to get the other 2 slices of property. So we want this all to flow nicely. But this wasn't it. The PUD wasn't it. But I'm hoping meeting with you and maybe Gary, I don't know if this is out of line or not, but maybe we can come up with something that he'll be happy with, we'll be happy with, not 100%, but something close enough where we can work together. Because we want to work with Gary. This isn't against Gary, it was against the PUD. But we still want something to go in there that's, I still plan on living there a long time. My kids plan on living there. We want to have something nice there, but not giving the power just for a PUD, just to say you can do whatever you want. Because he can do the condos right next to where the other 2 properties are at. So I think this discussion's still going to go further, if it's possible, but we want to work with him at whatever level we can. So I wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the 14 condos because I'm very, very, very confused. I know you brought it up to Mr. Salvadon about the access, and you replied, it's approvable. It's not approved. If the road was approved to those 14 townhomes, there would be a road coming out from this current PUD development. But since it's not approved, it's an EVA because that's the only size currently allowed. So if Mr. Salvadon wants to build his if Mr. Abatheria wants to build his 14 townhomes, go ahead, but he has no road access to them.
Anyone else that would like to address the commission on this item? Come on up.
Yeah, hi, thanks again for having me. I'd like to second what my neighbor said. I was really impressed by the work that the developer did and the consideration that he had for the community. Years from now, I'm going to be an architect, and what I saw from him, I believe, was a masterclass in considering the community. I think every developer should do that first and foremost. You always need to consider the context in which you are building. And I hope that as a commission, you don't lose the access you had to him because, like you guys had mentioned, how many times has a developer come to you and said, I want to work with you? How many times has the developer said, let's go back to the drawing boards, let's redo this until the community, the board, and the developer are content with the work that they have done. I really hope that moving forward, this is a work that as a board, as an organization, you guys pursue, and I hope that you keep that contract, or however it works. I hope that you stick with that relationship with him because I think that's the best thing that a developer, an architect, someone who creates space for community can do, is consider what is the community that goes here. And I really appreciate the work that he did. And so I hope that that's something that this board will consider moving forward. And I really appreciate your guys' time and everything that you do for this community as well. It means the world to me. It means the world to someone who just moved here. I love the environment that you guys are creating and maintaining. And so I hope that that's something you guys continue to do moving forward. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Hi, just wanted to give a quick comment. My name is Dave Pamprine. I'll get my address on here, 6408 Canmore, just around the corner. Something that I keep hearing about traffic and other things, which are all great things, but We need to look at this, in this master plan, looking at the areas around. To me, this is really simple, and thank you for voting against this. Look at the community. Look at around there. We don't have all these compact houses. We've got spread out. There's non-density. That's what people love about this area. If we keep adding the dense area there, the next one is going to be dense there. Somebody else sells, it's going to be dense there. The next thing you know, we'll be Royal Oak. And then we're going to have sky rises. It's not sustainable. People are going to leave. I'm going to leave. And I don't want to do that. I love this community. Thank you.
I just want to feed off of that. I think the way your zoning is mapped, I think it fits perfectly with the single-family homes. You know, you've got, as you cross Square Lake, this area, then you go into South Boulevard, which is your senior living. So the transition to single-family homes that older people can, you know, the plan he's got in there with the single family, I think it's beautiful. I think you just make that a single-family community, somewhere the older generation can go, and then they go to the nursing home. It's just a progression. You got it all on your map. It's right here. Just, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations. Real quick, I am concerned about the 3-story condos. I like the idea of the ranches and what he was attempting to do. I wish there was a way we could still continue this and work on it. I'm concerned with the infrastructure of that road, though, with all the schools and the congestion. I really feel that the concerns for the congestion is warranted, but I am concerned about the 3-story condos that now can be built. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment for the item that was on the agenda? Seeing no one coming forward, then we will move it back to the commission for planning commission comment. Ms. Zarnicki, anything?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Fox?
I just want to state for the record, because there are a number of comments regarding the communities of Royal Oak and Birmingham. My understanding is that those are very economically viable communities that are pleasant places to live and places that I've visited and enjoyed being in. I've just heard a lot of people bringing them up in a very negative connotation or something that Troy does not want to become. And I just want to make it very clear that there's nothing wrong with those communities. They're enjoyable communities to live in. So there you go, that's my comment.
Mr. Beekner?
I just want to thank Julie for being a part of our group. Thank you for your wisdom.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Congratulations, Ms. Barakis. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson?
Mr. Lambert, you have been a wonderful, smart, intelligent people. And good luck as a fellow commissioner.
Thank you. Mr. Faison?
I echo Mr. Hudson's comments about you, Dave. You did a great job as chairman, and you set a high bar that I know Ms. Parakis is going to match. Sure. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to quickly say, first of all, for everyone still here, we want to work with this developer as well. So this isn't over. I'm hoping that we continue this conversation and that we end up with something even better. Really quick, Mr. Fox, you know, you and I go back and forth, but I didn't take them as digs to Royal Oak, Berkeley, Birmingham. We all love those places, but we chose to live in Troy for a reason, because it's different. And I think we're saying we want options. You want the options within Troy. We're saying that Troy was the city we chose because we value certain things like space and things like that. So anyway, and finally, I want to congratulate Dave on Mr. Lambert on a great couple of years as chairman. You've done a great job, and I've got tough shoes to fill, but I'm very honored to take it over, and I appreciate that all of you put your trust in me, and I'm looking forward to the year.
Thank you.
Great job, Dave. Thanks for all the civil things you've brought to this audience and commission.
Thank you. Mr. Tagle?
Yep, thank you for your efforts, and you have brought a lot of wisdom to this group, and I appreciate that. You know, and as far as tonight, in this topic, this petition, I don't know how this is going to go forward. Because, and again, I don't know if it goes to council, and if council denies it, can he come back again with another PUD?
You can reapply.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, I hope he does, because I'm concerned that we talk a good game about what we want to see in this community, that we don't have a variety of housing, because Troy was built on the single-family, relatively large lots. And all of the things that we've talked about, studies that have been done in communities that are just booming with young people and booming with young families. That's not what they want as far as what Troy has to offer. But here we had an opportunity, and again, I get the idea, well, okay, the traffic and the density, but I just am concerned, where are we going with this discussion? You know, we talk about community, and again, I don't want to get off into the weeds again, but that little courtyard area, that's community. That's going out your door and seeing your neighbor across the way. It's not going out and seeing a street in front of your house. I think part of the issue is that's what we're all programmed. That's where we all live now. We go out our front door and there's a street. So if we don't have that, well, there's something amiss. That's not what we want. Well, I think sometimes we need to think out of the box a little bit and kind of try to envision something different than what we might be used to. So, thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Mr. Frayne?
Nothing else from me other than, Mr. Lambert, I'm going to miss you. Although you're not going anywhere, so that's good.
Still be here, sir. Mr. Savage?
He's not going anywhere.
I know.
He did a nice job, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert, for your service. You've been a fabulous chair. I also want to introduce our newest hire at Carlisle Warman, Shana Cott. She is a graduate of Wayne State with a master's in public administration, and she'll be assisting me here. You're not getting rid of me yet, but you will see her backing me up here and moving forward.
Great, thank you.
She's a lot prettier than you.
Oh, jeez. Want to get in trouble there, Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, old men can say that, yeah.
Just thank you for the compliments. I've enjoyed being chair for the past 2 years and looking forward to Ms. Parakis taking on the reins of office. And in spite of the fact that at one commission meeting I forgot Mr. Tagel's name, I attribute that to a long meeting. So, and one comment, kind of a follow-up on whether people want us to become like Royal Oak or Troy. The most important thing is, at local government, the citizens actually get to come forward and give their opinions. You can't do that up in Lansing unless you're a lobbyist. You definitely can't do it in Washington, D.C. So that's one of the great things about local government is you can participate. So with that, we are adjourned.